Okay, everybody, this is the beginning.
Yes. Of the beginning.
So welcome, my friends. I'm Jeremy Horst, if we haven't met in person before.
Thank you, Jeremy, for putting this together.
It would be an honor to be in the room with any one of you. But to get all of you together, into one room together, is astounding. And I never dreamed that this could really happen. But you know, we try to do things anyway. I think everybody in this room has dreams and ways that they see that they could be useful and just starts hitting against it and just keeps going. And we all, because I know all of you, I know some of your work. So I feel like we all kind of know each other already in a way. I know that all of you don't accept how things usually are. And so moving forward in the world, in the research, in the clinic, in policy, with how this magic combination of silver and fluoride will grow, will change, how we respond to it, what we figure out. I didn't want to accept what we already knew. So wherever we can, we've been going back and looking at original data and trying to produce new data, just like all of you. So my thought was, you know, we need to get on the same page. Well, that's what the review was for yesterday within IADR. Rick Niederman did a great systematic review of clinical trials. He went over everything that we've done. May Lay went over the mechanistic work that's been done. I talked about how we translate that into protocol. All of you have read, I'm sure, dozens of papers on this set of questions, on these set of techniques, but where from here? Every one of us has a slightly different idea, or drastically different idea, of where we go from here. Some people in the room do very basic science, chemistry, physics. Some people do 100% clinic. Some people build 300,000 person clinical systems. Some people guide policy across the country and other countries. Some people do dissemination work, which I do not understand what that means, which is why we're going to have it explained to us today and how that's relevant. My hope is that each one of us will meet someone new today. Someone that doesn't do the exact same thing that we do. A clinician will meet a clinical trialist. A policy person will meet a basic scientist. Because my work as a clinician is influenced by what the clinical trials say and how they're set up and what the basic science does. And I need to talk to other people to move forward. And I need other people's ideas to move forward with my own work, don't we all? So please take a moment to look around the room and connect eyes with someone that you haven't met before. It's a little hokey, but do it. Go for it. Come on. We're a little weird here in San Francisco. We're looking at strangers. No. Wonderful. You guys are great. Okay, so the next thing is, there is one order of business that I need to do before Nicola does this. This is Nicola Enos of the Hall Technique and the fiction trial.
Official social media photographer. That's my talent.
So in San Francisco, we don't ask for permission, we ask for forgiveness. But that said, so I don't have a photo release for everyone, or anyone. But please do let me know if you don't want your presentation or your image or anything like that shared on social media. So if you could just not Twitter it until the end of the meeting.
Okay.
And
or
so,
everybody who doesn't want their picture could duck.
Yeah, all right, for her picture, you know, close the you don't want to be seen.
You don't want to be seen, put your head down. Okay. Otherwise you will be social media, so we can, with the hashtag of IADR 2017, thank you.
All right, and SDF too, hashtag SDF.
Oh yeah, hashtag SDF.
But very seriously, if you don't want to be shown on video what you do here, please come let me know, and I will make sure that that the video that the Duffins are recording edits out anything that you're in. Some people here are representing grant applications and companies and things like that, and the idea is to share and be open. And also, there's real interests that affect careers and lives and families, and so please do come let me know if you don't want to be there. Another order of business is that in the little simple handout, we have the agenda, we have the questions for the subgroups, and then we have everybody's email address. I'm a computer geek, so I randomized the order because you are all my heroes. And I was like, well, I have to put that person first, and no, that's the random. So we just shuffle, shuffle them all. And actually, I'll full disclosure, I shuffled first, and my friend Ali Atiye showed up first, and with his first name and last name starting with A, he's been first too many times, so I shuffled again. But if your email is not on here, could you please give it to me by the end of the session, and I will email out to everybody. Everyone should be able to be connected. That said, the last order of business before we get started is that the main purpose of this meeting, as far as I'm concerned, and it's all of our meeting, the main purpose is to drive conversation. So really, this is all about the subgroups. So after people talk, we'll have a little break, and we'll come back and move the chairs around into 5 groups, and there's 5 subgroup leaders that are going to help keep the conversation driving forward in a useful way. We'll randomly divide everybody into the 5 groups. I have a little way to do that. We'll do it later. And it's about the conversations that happen there, and then the conversations that we come back to have together. There's some really key unpublished stuff, untold stories. Ali Sauter reminded me that some of this actually is published, but it's in Japanese, or it's not publicly available, or whatever it is. It's to get everybody on the same page of the stuff that's not out there for everyone to see. If the conversation after somebody's presentation is really going well, we'll keep going. But I don't want to get too bogged down in the details. So we're going to have a series of presentations that are really going to talk about what's not been shared with everyone. And then we're going to focus on the conversation. Any questions, concerns? Cool. And then I can't help but just announce what a few of us screwballs did this morning. Some of you guys were watching. But in front of the Moscone West Convention Center, where the IADR is going on across the street from here, a handful of us were doing silver diamine fluoride and glass ionomer cement fillings, which John is going to tell us about later, for free, without shots, without drills, fillings on the street with no electricity. So there's some people in here that are getting a little wild with this stuff, and the reason is that it works. Just a little teaser of what's to come from John. That said, Peter Milgram introduced me to this gentleman named Ali Sauter and told me that he had a story to tell. It happens to be a story that I've been trying to find for years. And let's all welcome Ali to come tell his story.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's an honor for me to be here. Thanks to Jeremy and Peter for giving me this opportunity. I'm probably not the best person to do this, honestly. There are a lot of Japanese professors who personally know the people we're going to talk about today and have much more information. So what I did to put this presentation together is that I had phone conversations or email communication with the number of people that I knew that were involved with silver diamond fluoride in Japan to get some more information and a better view of what has been going on in Japan. So I went to Japan in 2004 in search of non-conventional dentistry. I was so tired of the drilling and the filling. So I went to Tokyo Medical Dental University, Department of Cardiology and Operative Dentistry. My professor Junji Tagami yesterday just got the Distinguished Scientist Award of IADR. So he's the 3rd professor in row of this field in Tokyo that gets this award. First was Fusayama. I hope that people know Fusayama. Came up with the idea of caries affected infected dentin stuff. when he was a warrior, basically, in Southeast Asia, and then came back to Japan and developed the idea. And so we have the caries detector die from Tokyo Medical and Dental University. We also have the hybrid layer. Nakabayashi was from the same institution. So I thought it's a nice place to pursue my PhD, and I'm so happy that I did this. So our major specialization is bonding to dentin. This is reality that I hear a lot in the US, that there is no bonding to dentin, but there is bonding to dentin. Anyhow, so Fusayama's idea was that you have to remove infected dentin and leave affected dentin, infected dentin being bacterially contaminated, and affected dentin just being demineralized and remineralizable. So that is what his idea was. And he published in JDR in the 1960s. And I don't know if anybody was really from our conventional dentistry thinking about those things. But then the story of Ohaguro. So I edited a book named "The Toothpick from Toothpicks to the World." It's a book from a Japanese manufacturer of Tsumayoji, which is the toothpicks, and that was the first time I was kind of getting into the story of Ohaguro in Japan, and then learning about the reason why they selected a particular tree for their toothpick production, because that was shown to be effective in Ohaguro for so many years. So it's been a long-standing Japanese tradition for at least 1,000 years. That's what we know. That's been there for 1,000 years. In the Edo period, which is about 17th, 18th century, married women used to dye their teeth black using the solution of tannin-rich tree powder. So the Ohaguros got a tree powder, which is full of tannin, and ferrous acetate, which is basically produced from iron and vinegar. So that's what we know from Ohaguro. But something that I didn't know was that actually similar practices have been seen in other Southeast Asian countries, including Vietnam, China, Laos, and Philippines and stuff, and other countries. So I have a typo there. The idea of Ohaguro is not exactly the same in all the Southeast Asian countries. They use different powders, they use different substances. But what we know is that in Japan it's been for 1,000 years. Okay, so as to why they did it, there are actually a number of interesting stuff to learn about Ohaguro. But this picture actually kind of summarizes what Ohaguro meant, this Japanese tradition. That so it indicated that a girl had come of age, that would be 8 to 10 years old. Also signified a married woman, prevented tooth decay, symbolized fidelity, and cultural differences. It was to look attractive, right? So the definition of aesthetics, attractiveness, are different based on the cultures. So it seems that the Ohaguro was a tradition that moved from somewhere in Asia to Japan. So they learned it from either the Indians or the Chinese. And so there are 3 different theories of where Ohaguro came from, and we're not going to talk about that. But what is kind of relevant here is that the clinical records of 589 women in late 80s showed that 274 of 385 married women practice Ohaguro. So that is 70% of women, married women, who did this to show their fidelity, or who did this to become more attractive, or who did this to cover their decayed teeth. 70% did that. And so it was very well known for fixing the decayed tooth and sensitive teeth. It's not a big deal for the Japanese. They knew that it was for this purpose. And then the procedure for application, I was reading through these ancient texts, was that you have to first clean and dry tooth surface with the fusayoji, so that's a tufted toothbrush. Again, a long story of how this tree was selected for this purpose. And then apply the kanemizu, being the kane means iron or metal, mizu means water, right? And fushiko, basically the powder, yes, fushi, meaning the tree, ko, powder, to the tooth surface, and repeat the application on a daily or weekly basis. So it seems that it was a burden for the Japanese women to keep their teeth black. But it had to be applied every day or every other day, otherwise the effect would go away. So that's again what we know from this. And so this is a very nice clinical trial. It's before 1900 in Japan, and they have all these records in Japan. So that's great. So was it effective or not? I mean, what is the evidence? We talk about the evidence all the time. There is some kind of evidence-based dentistry here showing that, so this study is from Nagasaki University. Dr. Kubo is here. It's my pleasure. I'm using his colleagues' results showing that modern samurai and commoners, so both samurai women and commoners in the 17th and 18th century used ohaguro, right? So they looked at the skeletons and the bones remaining from these people, and looked at what they found was that the prevalence of caries and tooth loss was significantly lower in females than males. And that is historically very unusual because of the life cycle of women and different things and their frequent snacking and every other detail. They usually show more caries and tooth loss than men. But this study shows that since they did the ohaguro, or probably, we don't know, we can't really prove it, but what we observed, or they observed, was that this difference was mainly attributed to the wide practice of ohaguro by females at that time. So this is probably one piece of evidence showing by our standards today that ohaguro was effective for women to control decay and to increase the longevity of the teeth. It was also effective for periodontitis. That's all what we also know. So what happened to ohaguro in Japan in the beginning of the new kind of era? The Japanese emperor in the Japanese imperial court in 8070s ordered that the ohaguro should be banned by the imperial family. And that was kind of the start of the end of ohaguro, because they thought compared to the West, it's black, maybe it's not a very good idea. I don't know exactly what the reason was, but ohaguro was legally banned. Sounds familiar, right? In Japan, because they didn't like the appearance. And then it started to decline, and now is limited to geishas and some people playing theater, kabuki theater in Japan. So, Reiichi Yamaga, this gentleman was born in 1916 in Niigata. So that is the biography I found from him, from his autobiography. He studied electrical chemistry, or electrochemistry and naval sciences in Tokyo Institute of Technology. So Tokodai, Tokyo Institute of Technology. It's not Tokyo University, it's another great institute of technology in Japan. So he was not a dentist. That's important. We know that a lot of good things in our profession come from not us, unfortunately. So in 1951, he became a TMDU, my institution, associate professor. Then he moved to Osaka as a professor. It's a very difficult task to become a professor in TMDU. It's very, very competitive because each department has only one professor. So, and you cannot basically produce departments. So we have limited number of positions for professors. And then he became a professor emeritus in 1979. What we found from his bioautography was that he developed an interest in medicine and dentistry through studying regulation of pH in the body. So he was interested basically in the pH cycle, buffering capacity, and so forth as a chemist. And I got this information also from Yamaga family, whom I got to know very by coincidence, my good luck. Dedicated to his career to prevention, which was a common concept in both Eastern and Western medicine. So it sounds that he went through a lot of things, and to be able to find something that both the East and West agree on, and that was prevention. And then he acknowledged caries prevention, arresting, and remineralization to be the treatment of caries. So in 1960s, he thought that restoring the tooth is not treatment of caries. What he thought was that prevention, of course, because of this concept, arresting and remineralization is a treatment. And then he researched Ohaguro very deeply. I read that he went 15 times to an exhibition on Ohaguro, just to get familiar with how it was done. And based on this idea of Ohaguro, he developed 2 award-winning products based on the concept. Saffuride, everybody knows that's what we're talking about today, and High Bond. Yeah, this is from Shofu Company. This is probably less known in the world. The reason he thought that they need something like Saffuride was because of the increased incidence of caries in Japan. And this is from his paper published in Journal of Osaka Dental School. So because of the increase of sugar consumption after the war, there was increase in caries incidence in children. So he basically dedicated his career to finding a solution to decrease the prevalence and incidence of caries in Japanese children. The High Bond, maybe it's also worth attention. This contains tannin fluoride. So unlike Saffuride, it has a well-done US patent. Yamaga, Yokomizu, and Higashi are on this patent. And the HY bond is basically Higashi, Yamaga, Yokomizu, right? This HY agent, which is basically tannin fluoride, and it comes from the Ohaguro idea. The fluoride coming from the tea that was in the Kanemizu, and the tannin from the tree powder were thought to be helpful for desensitization and increase of the bond strength of a polycarboxylate cement. And then, so Shofu company basically has developed this idea into SPRG fillers today with the Gymer technology and so forth. They added the strontium and zinc, which is also mentioned in this patent. And so we have this new glass resin modified glass ionomer, which is actually a composite, and not so many people know about it. It releases a strontium and fluoride. So anyhow, but this is not what we're interested in. This is what we are more interested in. So he developed in 1969, after reading publications on the silver nitrate and the Hoey solutions. So I know people know, we'll talk about this today. So this is also from his book. He wrote 3 books at least on Saffuride. I have looked at them. So there was a very short notice. I had to put these slides in a very kind of compact shortage of time. So, but this is, I think, the key to understand what Yamaga thought of silver diamond fluoride when he developed it. So before I go through it, I should tell you that this reminds me of, this is Tokyo Metro map. So it's not very uncommon to Japan to think unconventional and think a little bit more about, you know, intellectual activity used in daily activities, right? Intellectual power for navigation through complicated problems like transport in Tokyo. So silver diamond fluoride, fluoride and silver, very simple. Silver reacts with protein and also the inorganic substances. At that time we thought it's calcium phosphate-based apatite, but we know now it's more complicated than apatite. It's carbonated apatite or impure apatite. Anyhow, so silver proteins and silver phosphates, calcium fluoride. So the expected actions is antibacterial, killing the bacteria. It inhibits the plaque. It's anti-enzymatic activity. I have confirmed it myself. Anti-demineralization. I personally have confirmed this in my own experiments. Calcification, not recalcification, just basically forming the calcium fluoride and calcification. Occlusion of dentinal tubules, remineralization of soft dentin, and adhesion improvement of phosphate cement. So this last one probably is not the focus of our symposium, but we're talking about these, right? For caries prevention, so these are clinical effectiveness. Imagine this is a book that a gentleman writes about something that he just developed. Isn't it great? Caries prevention, caries arrestment, inhibition of secondary caries, root canal treatment as a disinfectant, protection of pulpal tissue. Well, it's hard to say, we don't have much information about this, but we know that it does desensitization of dentin because of all these complicated interactions. Okay, so early clinical data from Japan, what we had at that time, which led to approval of Sakurai in '97, was that SDF showed a better desensitizing effect than 50% silver nitrate in 1969. These are clinical trials, right? It was also revealed that the highest effect on caries prevention compared to silver nitrate or 8% stannous fluoride in distilled water in 1969 through a 6-month clinical study. And this also was demonstrated that there was no secondary caries found around amalgam restorations with SDF application in primary teeth in 1974. So these are basically, I think, the major, not very big, clinical trials in Japan. So for pediatric dentistry, these are some of the negative sides. So a Japanese professor came to me yesterday who had heard a little bit about what's going on, and she wanted to warn us, and I said, okay, I will deliver your message to everyone. The reason it's not very common in Japan for pediatric cases is that they don't have the rampant caries problem anymore. They are an advanced country. We are an advanced country too, but we still have this rampant problem. Right? Rampant caries are rarely seen among Japanese kids, so it doesn't have those pediatric applications that we had in 1960s. Psychological effects due to unacceptable appearance. So she was telling me stories about all these years of silver diamond fluoride and kids with black teeth who were basically under a lot of pressure from their peers and bullying and so forth. Pulpal health in the long term is not very well known. That was something she was very concerned about, and also about effective bonding to sound tooth. Okay, so today, the Japanese authorities or organizations do recommend SDF for non-invasive treatment and prevention of root caries in elderly. So this publication is the result of a work group with several Japanese prominent professors. It was published in 2016. We can share it later, but their recommendation is that SDF can be effective to improve overall oral environment, as well as decreasing the caries in the root caries in elderly. A very nice slide by Dr. Kubo was that they asked a number of experts what they think, or which panel is showing where you should apply silver diamond fluoride on the root for this central tooth, central incisor, and which one should be restored. And I think there was a consensus in the group that they would put silver diamond fluoride at latest in this stage and probably go for a restoration at this stage. This is from that article. You can agree with this. I'm also very interested in silver diamond fluoride. I'm a very lucky person because I got to know Dr. Peter Milgram in University of Washington through another coincidence. I went there to the Department of Restorative Dentistry, but for some reasons I was connected to him, and that was a very, very good coincidence for me. So I'm personally very interested in effective silver fluoride on sound dentin. So what we could show was that if you follow the Jeremy's protocol, you basically decrease the bond strength of conventional adhesives, not glass ionomer. We're talking about adhesives, composites, to dentin, and then there are ways to increase it. So I like to rinse after a silver diamond fluoride, and if possible, I would like to remove the superficial infected dentin. These are SEMs for the same study. It's a very nice case of silver diamond fluoride for a cancer patient. So we basically didn't have any other option for this patient. This is courtesy of Peter. And I've seen this patient after 10 years. he's still having all these teeth remaining. And he's coming back and saying, you know what, I'm not very happy with all this black appearance. So we are going one by one and replacing these cervical caries after 10 years because he was so involved with his medical care at that time. There's also a little bit of crazy idea. I'm thinking that if we have silver down fluoride, so we have these patients in the Dental Fears Research Clinic at UW. They are a house of different problems. Iatrogenic dentistry results, right? This is a result of dentistry being done in a conventional way for so many years. Severely eroded an attrition tooth. Basically, dentition is ruined. So silver diamond fluoride can help this patient by just stopping the progress of erosion and erosive wear. And also, if caries is a problem with him, I don't think caries is a problem. And then we can probably go use this CAD/CAM technology to fabricate some snap-ons, like the snap-on smile, but this one is functional. And this can only be done when we preserve all these severely worn teeth with silver diamond fluoride. And he cannot basically tolerate any conventional dental treatment. And also I'm trying to introduce something like this in a dental school. When we have a patient like this, they basically have only a flipper option. They don't have the financial means of getting a proper treatment. But I think this is a proper treatment. Silver diamond fluoride, sending them back and then coming back and getting some glass ionomer. This patient was very happy. It was done by a dental student and there was no problem, and we worked on other teeth as well. Thank you very much for your attention. I apologize if I didn't.
I'd like you to stay up here if anyone has in particular questions about Yamaga, about what's been going on in Japan with silver diamine fluoride for the last 50 years that they've had it. That's really why I went to him, was I said, well, are there still cavities in Japan? If they've had silver fluoride for 50 years? If anybody has any questions. Is that the answer? Do I have one more minute?
Well,
All right, Marty.
you didn't say silver, you said ferrous.
Mhm.
Where'd the silver come in? I know that the teeth were blackened, but in your,
In development of SDF,
yeah, 1,000 years.
oh yeah, the silver was not there for 1,000 years. Yeah, the silver was something that he got idea according to the silver nitrate knowledge that's been there for treatment of caries and hypersensitivity for so many years. Yeah.
Okay, more discussion to come. Thank you.
Okay, I'll be happy to give you more information.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk just very briefly about protocol. We went over the science behind the protocol that we've come up with for the application of silver diamine fluoride yesterday. I'm not going to go into all those details. What I really wanted to do was open the floor for discussion about the importance of each of the steps. So, I made up this cute little expression that for treatment of silver diamine fluoride, you dry, you apply, and you say bye, right? And so our UCSF protocol, we were just coming up with something new to guide our students. We wanted to be very careful about the safety. There was really not a lot of safety data out there except for just experience, and it seems okay. So that's why we added the rinse initially. Again, now there's been a safety trial led by Charity Ludwig and Peter Milgram and the team at Advantage and UW that shows that in 3 to 5-year-old children, a double-blinded placebo-controlled trial with the blue silver diamine fluoride, by the way, which is, I think it's coming, there were no adverse effects. Not a huge trial. There was 30 kids and 36 kids in the different groups. It wasn't a rigorous assessment in the sense of doing pharmacokinetics or pharmacodynamics on the kids, but we did, call the families the next day and ask the standard battery of questions, and no more kids had nausea or any other untoward effects. And then at 2 weeks of the evaluation, when they looked over the caries, everybody was fine. So that tells us we don't need a rinse. That tells me I don't need a rinse. So now my protocol in terms of application is dry and apply and that's it. I still do believe in the liquid soaking into the lesion. And so in particular, we learn from our failures, and our failures stay with us. And I've had a handful of little tykes who sat perfectly still and let me put all of the silver fluoride on their cavities, and they kept growing. And those I think about, those are the ones I think about. You think about the test you got the F on or whatever. You don't think about the test you got the A's on, right? And so because of that, clinically, personally, I've been following Steve Duffin's recommendation of putting a varnish or Vaseline or something over the tooth if I can't protect that the silver fluoride being on the cavity for at least a minute, which is plenty of my kids that, we do it very quickly. So I haven't been going around suggesting that other people do that because it's just based on intuition, based on clinical experience, but that's what we've been doing. Has anybody else been doing anything else for just getting the silver fluoride onto or into a lesion?
Flossing?
Hmm?
Using the floss.
Using the floss. So the Jason Hirsch unwaxed floss technique. So again, if we go back to G.V. Black, 1908, unwaxed floss for silver nitrate to get it interproximal. Jason Hirsch, 2015 or whatever, unwaxed floss, silver diamine fluoride to get it interproximal. And all the credit to Jason, he came up with it independently, albeit 107 years later. So the idea there is that if you have an interproximal lesion that you know is there, but you can't directly access it, then you floss without any silver fluoride. You take an unwaxed piece of floss or super floss, put it through the contact, and then you put silver diamine fluoride onto the floss as if you were putting it onto the lesion, and then pull it into place and let it soak in. Marcus?
Right along those lines, another thing that we've tried that works pretty well is those wooden toothpicks that you can find that are kind of wedge-shaped. I think they're called stimidents.
Stimidents.
Yeah.
Those work really well. They hold on to it. They help separate the interproximal space, and that's just another alternative.
And a gentleman named Neil Saput introduced us to the idea of putting in ortho separators. Duh, right? We do that sometimes too. If parents just won't let you take x-rays, or the kid just won't let you take x-rays, or whatever it is, you can come back, much later that day or 2 or 3 days later, and then directly access the interproximal. So why not use that to directly access the lesion? Light curing. Is anyone light curing to try to precipitate? Ali, Yasmi? Yasmi, would you mind talking about your experience with that?
That's in our protocol at the school. What we are doing is on the young kids that you can keep it very long. We are just shining the light, and it precipitates immediately. You see it gets dark as the anterior tooth gets. It just buys us 30 seconds, which is a few minutes. But we're bringing our kids back 2 weeks later to have the arrest. And we are evaluating the kids. We don't say bye.
I don't mean permanently by, it's a joke. Thank you for clarifying that. Yasmin, I do have some follow-up questions about that. So when I've done that, so I put the silver diamine fluoride on and I light cure. When it precipitates immediately, it's black anywhere that the silver fluoride touched. In your experience, does it go away on the healthy tooth structure? When you see the kid back in 2 weeks, is it just in the lesion?
It's usually on the lesion, but it's also on affected enamel. Any of the enamel that is demineralized is going to be severely stained, just as stained as the dentin. So it doesn't stay dentin alone. And a lot of my work is based on this because I'm very interested with Dr. Niederman in patient-centered outcomes. So for me, it is very important what these parents feel about the staining, and I believe very, very, very strongly. A lot of our cases, I have hundreds of cases of anterior and posterior tooth. My clinical problem are the 9-month-old kids with decay, the 12-month-old kids with decay. I cannot drop them off. I cannot take them to the OR. I cannot do gut restorations on them. So to solve my clinical problem, these are the kids that I'm just trying to buy a year before I can even bring them to the OR, anything, right? But because these kids have massive white spots everywhere, you can bet that the discoloration is going to be huge, incredibly noticeable. So I feel very strongly about showing the parents pictures that are very realistic and having them know what to expect. We just finished a study with Dr. Niederman. We're presenting on Saturday afternoon. And I'm very interested in that, with the parents having a really good informed consent, parents really knowing what to expect. And I can convince them, they all buy into it. But so far I have never had one that wanted to keep the teeth that way. They, like the one that you just, the doctor just showed before, at some point when the patient's cooperation is better, they come back to have you do something to mask the discoloration. That's great because at least you have teeth to do something with, when in the past they came back for you to do the instructions. so we're very successful doing that. But it is part of a long-term caries management strategy. It's not something that you just do and
Great.
get done. Yeah.
Arwa?
I just want to comment because I have mixed feelings about the light cure. I was very enthusiastic about doing light curing because it just gives me the pleasure of showing my students and my parents that it really turns black. So it's working, and that's what.
Can you speak up, Arwa? They're in the back, they can't hear you.
Okay.
Sure, you want to come up?
That's-
Sorry, we don't have a microphone.
Oh, that's fine. No, my voice is so loud. So they will start leaving
Project.
the room.
Turn on your projection.
Okay. I don't know. I'm the one who who worked with Jeremy a long time ago, and we had long talks about protocols, and I hope we can come back home with with a protocol. I really like the idea of the light curing, and when I started showing it to the students at the school, they really, because they would like to see what are you talking about and how does it go for black. And I work on the other side of the river in Iowa with a chemist. So I told her, hey, I found how to do it really quick and it's gonna work out. And she told me, let me think about it, I'll come back to you. She's much smarter than me, so. She came back to me later and said, okay, you're doing a reaction, but it's a different reaction. So what are you looking for? What's your outcome? Is it the black discoloration or the silver phosphate, or is it the metallic silver precipitate down in the dentinal tubules, or is it the silver oxide? I told her, okay, explain these things for me. So I want caries to be arrested in children. She told me, okay, you decide this on your own, but what I'm telling you, if you do the light cure, because this is a product that's sensitive to light, with heat also, talking about the constant of solubility, the K, when we talk about reactions, the silver oxide is the highest, like it's to the 10 to the minus 70 power. So it really reacts very well, and it's the most stable compound. So once you react, once you induce this reaction with the light cure, you're gonna produce more of a silver oxide rather than silver phosphate. So if this is what you want, go for it. But if this is not what you want, because you showed me Rosenblatt and all these papers about the silver phosphate, so is it the silver phosphate? If this is what you want, wait on the black discoloration. It's a byproduct either way, so it's an area of discussion. If anybody has any, research going on, I do not know a lot about it, but this was just a communication.
So in summary, you're saying when you light cure, you get silver oxide.
More, yes, it is.
More
It's more of a
distribution.
silver oxide. It's just exactly the same way we were talking about. We apply fluoride varnish
Yep.
on top of the silver diamond fluoride, and we found in the chemistry lab it tends to shift the reaction completely to fluoroapatite, ignoring silver phosphate. So, and I'm not a chemist. I'm just regurgitating what she's saying to me. But at least she showed me with Raman spectrophotometry and some stuff that, okay, this is the precipitate. She still insists that you still need some time to make the reaction happen, like at least 1 minute of pure reaction between dentine, enamel, and silver. But this is an open thing for discussion. I'm not holding any position. Yes.
I don't think it is an area for discussion. I think it is an area for research. We need
Yes,
to-
yes,
to
of
get
course.
out there and actually look into it, because
And
I
we're
don't think we
doing
have the
something,
answer, right?
There's a comment in the front
What
over
about
here.
potassium iodide that they face in Australia, SDI?
Potassium iodide. So what about it? So my comment on potassium iodide is that I was using it almost exclusively for the first year that I was using silver nitrate and silver diamine fluoride. And what I found was that the color change was just delayed. And I believe that's what the clinical trial in older adults with silver diamine fluoride with or without potassium iodide showed. My interpretation of that, which could be completely wrong, is that eventually the chemistry happens. Eventually the silver will oxidize. And you know, in my laboratory studies, potassium iodide kills bacteria too. The combination, you get precipitation kind of early, so it doesn't spread as much, so it's hard to say whether it's as deadly to bacteria with the silver iodide versus not. Iodide kills, silver kills, so for me, I was okay with going forward with it. But the whole point was to not have the cavity turn black, and I found that it just delayed the blackening. I also did this underneath a lot of resin restorations, and yeah, the real expert is over there. So, and again, the resin would turn black after about a month instead of immediately. Dr. Craig?
Yeah, as the inventor of Riva Star, the whole purpose was not, the product not to be used on open and carious lesions. The brief to me, when I developed it, was they wanted something that they could use on permanent teeth and be able to put glass ionomer cement on top and cause no adjacent discoloration. There was never, ever any intention for it to be used on open carious lesions. And I'm not surprised that they go black. It's just, I guess once a product hits the advertising department, you know, it's like the air hitting the fan. But can I come back and say the whole protocol was designed where we had adult teeth to remove the last layer of caries, there'd be a pulp exposure. Okay, put on the silver fluoride, diamond silver fluoride, followed by the potassium iodide, put on excess potassium iodide to, because that dissolves silver iodide, so you've got to actually produce silver iodide, you dissolve it, you wash it away, you put on glass ionomer cement, must be glass ionomer cement, forget resins. Resins basically don't like the silver. As I think that gentleman showed, that resins do not like silver. And so the whole idea was, as I say, that the initial treatment, glass ionomer cement, and then resin composite on top of that. So I'm sorry in the translation what has happened, and I understand that Japanese study, they use slightly lower concentrations of potassium iodide than we did originally. It was overkill. I'll tell you now, it was overkill. We really loaded up the ammonia and we really loaded up the potassium iodide, all in an effort to prevent staining around permanent teeth. So I hope that's put in perspective.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So if anyone didn't hear that,
Yeah.
silver diamine fluoride, and then potassium iodide, and then glass ionomer cement, which is going to be basically a big topic of our next speaker. Please go ahead.
I'm Aronita Rosenblatt from Brazil, and it's real life in Brazil. 80% of our children have untreated dental decay. So I don't mean the Brazilian children, of the poor Brazilian children. So we see children in school every year and they come back with open cavities. They have untreated deciduous teeth. So we have to do something. And the providers, the National Health Service, cannot afford good quality glass ionomer cement or other kind of resins, composite resins, and I would like to acknowledge Dr. Fusayama, that I had the pleasure to meet when I was a dental student, and he had the best bonding agent for his clear field. So I was very happy to hear about him today. So first, we worked with silver nitrate. For many years, when I was I became a teacher at the dental school. We are teaching our students to treat with silver nitrate. And at that time, the dentists were not pleased with the look of the cavities. mothers didn't care. We didn't even have one complaint. It's only dentists who don't like the look, the black look of the cavities. And then after working with paper, doing a systematic review under the supervision of Dr. Liederman, I learned from, Shul is not here, I thought Shul would be here today, not yet, that his clinical trial was a beautiful clinical trial. He had 4-year-old children with class 1 cavity in front teeth. And he paralyzed 99% of caries. So, and he prevented caries, and so we couldn't show that really, but he paralyzed 99% of caries. And that later, thinking about this again and again, anything we could have stopped that. Because front teeth, class 1 front teeth, we could have stopped caries with anything. But the problem where I come from is open, complex cavities. And they come every year with more. And they can afford, there is no access to dental care. And that's why we use silver, we are very experts on silver diamine fluoride, because we do on 6 months basis or a year basis, depends on how the turnover, if children come back for treatment. And we can say that we paralyze caries. And we can see that we arrest all caries. And we see that the tissue that is not compromised by caries doesn't turn black, only the caries tissues. So that's the best we can have up to now. So that's all I wanted to tell you, that I have no experience with light healing. And what we do is just dry the cavities and apply 30% silver diamine fluoride, because in Brazil we don't make 38%. It's only 30%. And we try to see these children twice a year. And we can at least hope that one day they will come back with filled cavities, but it hasn't happened yet. So that's what I can tell you.
Well, with Aranita Rosenblatt saying we need to fill the cavities, I think that couldn't be a better introduction for John Fricella to talk about the combination of silver diamine fluoride with other treatments. John, would you come up and share something with us?
Okay, first of all, I want to apologize. I don't have any slides. I just got back from backcountry lodge in the middle of British Columbia where I got choppered in. The moment that I was leaving from my home to go up into this lodge, Jeremy calls me. "Oh, I'm glad I caught you at the last minute. You still home?" Yeah. "Would you mind speaking?" So I wrote this in a backcountry lodge in the middle of nowhere, okay, in the Monashi Provincial Park. I didn't have a computer with me, so it's handwritten. And I really want to kind of read it because I put a lot of thought into this, into what I wanted to say. Just one quick comment, because you asked little tricks, and when I have good access, dry applied by to me means to really dry, and I mean really dry. I think of decay as a sponge. I wanted to dry the sponge of all saliva, because the saliva is proteinaceous and the silver diamine fluoride, the silver ions can't penetrate that, okay? So I need it very dry. Then I like to agitate. So I like to use an applicator that is stiff. Not a wimpy one on the end, like a little brush, but something that is stiff. And during that 1 minute, I don't just apply it, I like to agitate it. Because logic tells me that if I do, I am going to increase capillary action that will bring the silver ions to the base of the lesion. Afterwards, I apply fluoride varnish for 2 reasons. Number 1, I want to protect that silver diamine fluoride from becoming diluted by the patient's saliva. How long will it stay protected? Maybe a minute, maybe 2. In a real spitty patient, maybe even 30 seconds. But that gives me 30 seconds to a minute to 2 minutes for more capillary action to bring the silver ions to the base of the lesion. That's my logic. Number 2, it masks the bad taste. Okay, for children. I'm a pediatric dentist, okay? So, just my 2 cents on that. Now, why glass ionomer in SMART instead of composite? Okay, so bear with me, please. SMART is about bacteriostatics and remineralization or recalcification, as you said, okay, over a long period of time. And we'll talk about that period of time in a minute, okay? SMART requires the application and periodic reapplication, if necessary, of silver diamine fluoride and glass ionomer to slow down the caries process enough to eventually stimulate odontoblastic response from the pulp to create secondary dentin protection over the pulp. Do I have data on this? No. I have 10 years of clinical experience. And I'll explain what that clinical experience is. Kid comes in, he's got a bombed out first molar, he's 6 years old, the thing is just erupted in his mouth, but it's bombed out. You've all seen it, okay? I don't have much time. This was supposed to be an exam. I'm on, a 30-minute recall day, which I call 30-second recall day because I'm seeing like 50, 60 patients. Okay, my dentist said, we don't have time, Dr. John. Whoa, stop, we do have time. Give me a silver diamine fluoride. Dry, apply, put glass ionomer over it, look at the mom and say, I want to see this kid in 3 weeks. This may not work. Here's a script for some Pen VK. If it blows up, take the Pen VK, call us. Either way, I want to see the kid in 3 weeks. 5 years go by. And this happens to all of us, right? Kid comes in, the dentist said, oh my God, Dr. John, do you know what you did 5 years ago? I'm like, what happened? Oh, this and that happened, Dr. John. We're sorry we didn't get it. I look at the kid. This has been in his mouth for 5. Hey, how's that tooth? And the kid goes, what tooth? And I say to the mom, you didn't have any problem with that tooth? I didn't have a problem with that tooth. No. Why? Should we? Okay. I'm going to drill the glass ionomer out. I'm not going to give you a shot. No needles, no drills. I'm just going to drill the glass ionomer. I want to see what's going on in there. So I get the glass ionomer out. I'm looking into the decay. It's arrested decay. What does it look like? A charcoal briquette, right, Peter? A charcoal briquette. So I take a small spoon excavator. I'm going, does this hurt? The kid, no. I start popping out the charcoal briquette. Little by little, I get it out. Does it hurt? Does it hurt? Does it? And all of a sudden, from my light above, what do I see? The shine of glass. Secondary dentin. That is as hard, glass-like, protect. The tooth has healed itself from the inside out. That's the basis of SMART. But it took 5 years. So I don't want to take that thing out in 6 months. Oh, Dr. John, let's make it white and put in a composite. That causes decay. No, I don't think so. Let's leave it in for at least a while. Okay, we'll talk about composites in a minute. Okay, SMART arrests the progression of caries in a tooth and prevents caries in adjacent teeth via the zombie effect of silver and the continual fluoride release from glass ionomer at the tooth surface. Using composite or covering SMART with composite inhibits this from happening. Thank you, Doug, for that.
Might want to define SMART.
Yeah, SMART, silver modified atraumatic restorative treatment. If Joe Franken is here, I'm sorry, we borrowed your art and put an SM in front of it. We silver modified it. Everybody doing Hull, I just call them SMART Hull. I had a 3/4 crown fall out in the middle of the wilderness 3 days ago. I went into the office, mixed up some Forte, put the Forte in there, bit down on it. But first, I applied silver diamine fluoride. Anything I do, I'm going to apply silver diamine fluoride first and then do it. So I've turned, my life in dentistry has turned into SMART, silver modified Hall crown, silver modified gold crown, silver modified glass ionomer. So that's what SMART is. Okay, definition. All right, how long does SMART take to actually create secondary dentin formation? I just told you, I think, 4 years is my experience, 4 to 5 years is in my experience, okay? So 6 months to 1 year is not long enough to observe the secondary dentin formation. Prevention of caries in adjacent teeth begins immediately after placing a SMART because you've got glass on top. And glass on an occlusal surface prevents caries in adjacent teeth and caries interproximally, as per the Italian study with 2,777 Children, when's the last time you saw a study with 2,700 plus kids? That's a big study. That proved that glass ionomer on the occlusal surface prevents caries interproximally. It's pretty interesting. You know, bottom line is, the more glass ionomer and more silver diamine fluoride and glass ionomer I can put in anybody's mouth, yours, mine, any kid I see, the less cavities you're going to have eventually. Okay? So, the other thing is what you said, which is that we're noticing improved gingival health. I've got no data on that, but you said it, that they have, what'd you say? You said that say it again? Ohagura reduces perio disease, and they were noticing that as early as 1870. That's what your slide said, correct? Okay, well, Dr. Duffin and I have been noticing this in the patients to which we apply silver diamine fluoride and glass ionomer, that we're improving gingival health. And it's obvious, and we have slides on this that we can show you, but do we have a study? No. This is our clinical observation. Mine, 10 years of clinical observation, okay? And that's without any behavioral changes. I'm not asking them to eat differently or brush. I know they're not changing their brushing. I know they're not flossing. But that doesn't mean I want them to do that. I want them to do all the camera things. I want all that. But in my population, I'm a public health dentist. I've never owned a private practice. I work in some private practices, including Dr. Quas's. Dr. Kate Quas is here today. She is the first person that suggested that I apply glass ionomer after applying silver diamine fluoride, because I was seeing so many cases of so much rampant decay that I wasn't catching up on the restoration to function. I was leaving cavitation that was collecting Tootsie Rolls and Doritos. And then I was getting secondary dentin despite the silver diamine fluoride because of the Doritos and the Tootsie Rolls. So I just need to stop Doritos and Tootsie Rolls from going in there. I think I'll try glass ionomer on Dr. Then I met Doug Young, and then it all started making sense that I'm going to be doing combination therapy.
Gum aches? You mentioned gum aches.
Gum aches, yeah. So I was applying silver diamine fluoride on numerous patients, and I was arresting decay. And then I was getting phone calls X number of weeks later, and Mom says it didn't work. He's got a toothache. Oh, bring him in. So he comes in, I can see the decay is arrested. And I take my Explorer, and I reach down in, and I pull out the fin of a toothfish. And I go back in again, and I pull out the whole side of a cow. And the kid goes, oh man, that feels better, thanks. So kids don't know the difference between toothache and gum ache. That's what made me say, oh, I need to restore to function and fill that so that it doesn't impact with food, and so I don't get the emergency phone call saying that he has a toothache. He didn't have a toothache, he had a gum ache. Okay? So SMART was invented out of necessity. Okay, necessity is the mother of invention. It was really out of necessity. Okay. I didn't know much about glass ionomers when I started this. Luckily, I met Doug Young, who turned me on to Graham Mount and Hien No, and my life changed. SMART depends upon ionic transfer for its remineralization benefits to work. Composite has zero calcification or recalcification properties. Glass ionomer does. Okay. Ionic transfer cannot occur in the absence of water. It's a hydro event, guys. Okay. Composite is a material that demands dryness, which makes ionic transfer impossible inside or on the surface of a tooth, which is why composite is not for SMART. Yesterday, 2 days ago, Jeremy wrote me. Can I quote, please? If you don't mind.
Please.
Young, thank you. Jeremy, thank you for this. Quote, I spent the morning with an SEM EDS looking at smarted teeth. I was looking 1 millimeter from the bottom of a gick and found aluminum and strontium. These could only have come from the gick, which had popped out during preparation for the experiment. We confirmed the same finding in another sample with retained gick. I always rolled my eyes at the idea of ion exchange, but it's real. The GIC does more than seal the lesion. I never thought I'd say that. End quote, Jeremy Horst. I jumped out of my chair and started screaming, glory, hallelujah. My wife said, what's up? I said, Jeremy has discovered what I know to be true clinically because I've been observing it for 10 years. Certainly we need to prove it. I'm not saying that we shouldn't study this and that it shouldn't be a comprehensive study. Everything that I've said so far needs to be studied. I'm just giving you my clinical observations and having done this for 10 years. Okay, that's all it is, simple. But that's evidence-based too, my evidence, right? You can say it's biased, whatever. All I'm saying is it works. My population is itinerant. I am an itinerant dentist. It says it on here. I work bi-coastally. I work in Maine, and I work in Oregon, and I work in Hawaii, and I go all over the place. So I am no more a constant in the equation than my patients are, who are often no-shows because they are in that population, Medicaid population. Okay, I seldom treat outside of that population. So, in conclusion, to me, glass ionomer cement is a medicine, first and foremost. This man over here proved that in Saudi Arabia in the 80s. Okay. Martin McIntyre. He didn't have silver diamine fluoride. He only had glass ionomer cement. And he wiped out tooth decay in 10,000 children in Saudi with that. And imagine how much better it would have been if he had just had a little silver diamine fluoride too. He only had glass ionomer. Right, Martin? Okay, thank you. Okay, first and foremost, GIC is a medicine because of its remineralizing recalcification abilities, right? It heals teeth from the inside out. SDF works similarly, so together they both provide powerful combination therapy and simultaneously fill cavitation, which you were talking about, fill cavitation without needles, drills, sedation, or general anesthesia. Hello. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's why Dr. Kate and I have been doing SMART for 10 years. And it's been working great in our practice of very, very many Medicaid, if not largely Medicaid population kids. Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
Just a quick question. How you select the case? You know, what kind of, you know, the kids, what kind of teeth you go to?
Well, if I have cavitation that I know that Tootsie Rolls and Doritos are going to fall into, and or class 2s that I know that meat is going to impact into, and I'm going to get a phone call saying it's a toothache when it's really a gum ache, that's my case.
If the kids has the symptoms, what are they going to do?
Oh, if there's any indication of irreversible pulpitis, obviously no. If it's on the border but no symptomology, in other words, I don't have a bubble, I don't see anything periapically, you know, on the x-ray, I don't see periapical abscess, but it looks like it's dangerously close, I don't go anywhere near the pulp with a spoon excavator or anything. I just leave it alone, put the silver diamine fluoride on, put the glass ionomer on top. If I think it's an iffy case, I send them out the door with a script for an antibiotic. I tell them to fill the script, but don't take it. And I explain to them to look for the bubble, if they see the bubble, or if there's pain or swelling or infection that's involved with that tooth. Two things. Start taking the antibiotic and call the office immediately so we can schedule for that tooth to either be extracted or root canal or whatever from that point on. I always take the chance, no matter how close it is, no matter how dangerous it looks, because I can do absolutely no harm. I have never, knock on wood, seen a SMART fail due to the SMART. It's always due to the fact that the pulp has been invaded by the bacteria and we didn't have symptoms yet. We were ready to have symptoms. I mean, the fuse was lit, it just hadn't hit the bomb yet. Okay? It's not because of the SMART, it's not because the silver caused that or the glass ionomer caused that, it's because we were a little too late in catching it. So it's always worth taking the chance. Yeah.
So yeah, so I was just on my phone texting Jason Hirsch on a 7-year-old yesterday. I was in clinic. I was like, hey, it's reversible papaitis, and it's a large lesion.
Did you say reversible?
Reversible papaitis.
Reversible papaitis.
But as I touch the tooth, patient's jumping. What am I going to do? I'm sending him back and forth, clinical images and radiograph, and that's exactly what he said. So my question to you is, based on your experience, what percentage of these reversible lesions, reversible papaitis lesions, have you seen blow up? Just can you give us an anecdotal?
I can give you, I could say 99% unequivocally, but I can't say that that's true for everyone.
So 1% do blow up, you say?
Well, only because I don't want to say 100% because you're the one, no one gets 100%. So
No one
because
trusts
you
100%.
no one trusts 100%, so he says.
But never mind Germany. For you, in your hands.
100%, I'm sorry.
He's also itinerant.
I'm also itinerant, number one. I'm taking a lot of chances, and number two. But I would hear from her, or I would hear from another colleague where I was doing it. Go ahead, Kate.
Okay, so this is my clinic. We do this for fee-for-service people. This isn't just for our Medicaid population.
Right on, thanks.
So this is a treatment modality that is offered across the board. Somebody asked about when do we do it or what are the indications. If there's caries there and it seems reasonable, it could be incipient cavities that we're protecting it from growing. It could be symptomatic things. Your question about reversible, you don't have them blow up. It's the irreversible that do, on occasion.
Right, but
You misinterpreted an irreversible or a reversible as being irreversible.
No, I'm saying it was reversible. It was like it was not.
Like you said this.
It was a reversible.
Okay,
lesion.
I got
it. Was
it.
a reversible. My question's on the reversible ones, right? And I mean, being that you're not the itinerant, he is. So
we're not the what?
I'm itinerant, but you are not.
But you're not.
Yeah, so
in your
the
case,
population is stable. It's
right. So, but I'm saying in your case,
Same people.
can you say what percentage anecdotally have you had that have come back? The reversible lesions that have had.
Zero.
Okay, great. So straight.
Zero.
And she would be calling me
His
a minute.
patients.
Yeah.
So it's.
I don't just work in her office. We're real close friends. I'm going to get that phone call from her before I get it from anybody. Hey, you know that big one you tried to save? It didn't work.
Right.
I haven't gotten that phone call from her.
We do have them fail, but not because it's reversible. We do have kids that don't
Correct.
have any symptoms, and we're getting them comfortable to manage their treatment, either in a definitive setting.
Right on.
So I want to note that these two are like the co-inventors of this thing that we're calling Smart Now, and so they've both been doing this for like 12 years. And what I would add just before we move on to another question is that we also have the person who has done all of the hard work to get the Hall technique all over the world.
Yeah.
And I would ask Nicola, we discussed this the other day, what do you think about silver diamine fluoride before Hall technique? And you mentioned a 98%, so I'd like you to...
Yeah, okay. So I was going to make a point there. My point is that there's no point in asking about anecdotal evidence. I think it's interesting, but it's not useful really for speaking to patients. I think we actually do need data. We're supposed to be scientists as well as artists.
Right on.
I think we need to start taking responsibility for our actions and count properly what we're doing. And Kate and I have been talking about that quite a bit in the last little while. But I do think, everyone in this room is doing dentistry day in and day out. There's, most of us are, some of us are public health dentists who are actually making a difference. But my point is that if you're going to carry out dental treatment, you should be counting, you should be auditing your own work, you should be looking at your standards. And yet, the Hall technique, 98% is now from 3 randomised controlled trials, not just the one that I did. And it's been scrutinised by people from abroad who don't believe our data and come and actually look at the forms that were done 9, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, in fact, by dentists who filled them out and looked at them. And people stood in my room at work, which is a beautiful view out over the River Tay on level 9 of the dentist's. But they've stood and gone through every single piece of paper that the dentists have filled in because they can't believe the high results we've got. And so I do believe the smart results. I don't disbelieve it, but I don't think it's good enough as scientists to say to people, do this because I think it's really great. I think we have to move on to the next level and we have a responsibility to do that.
I completely agree. And as I was just having a conversation with Peter, and he was telling me like I need to meet Kate, that our problem in the United States is that we don't have a fiction trial going.
That's right.
And and that's what I've been telling everyone, that we need to put one together because that's the best that we have right now.
Well, why? We've already got 4 randomised control trials in the whole technique, and I get emails every week, every couple of weeks, from people saying we'd like to do a randomised control trial in the whole technique. I mean, to be quite honest, as Jan Clarkson said to me, stop doing the trials, tell people to stop. Proven, move on. There's lots of other stuff.
But there's...
So we need to have an awareness when we do this work, and when we do this, I know I'm sounding like a geek now, but when we do randomised controlled trials and we do produce evidence that it is also applicable in other settings, with the corollaries that yes, we've used general practitioners in the UK who we know aren't very good at paediatric dentistry because they get paid £8 for doing a filling, they get paid £17 for putting a crown on. It's a joke. Which is why the Hall technique came out as a necessity. So, that, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. So, don't keep doing trials just for the sake of it, just because you think that by proving it in your own environment, you will therefore prove it to other people. I think start educating those people as to the value of evidence and how to actually use it, and look for the gaps. I mean, you're right, the fiction trial might be particularly, it's not a great example because it is very UK-centric for necessity. The trial itself was called for, and the £3 million was given to us to look at what we could do to improve NHS dentistry in the UK. But yeah.
So your opinion of Smart Hall versus Hall?
Well, I did my first one last week because it was a kid who had a cavity that I thought shouldn't be hauled. And I've done it, but I haven't really got an opinion on it because I've no evidence, I'm afraid.
I've done
evidence I have is for Hall, and it's 98%. So if you want the extra 2%, 6 domains, 6
Bingo.
SDF.
Thank you.
If you want.
Thank you.
Again, the problem isn't that it doesn't work in reversible pulpitis. The problem is that pulpitis is a spectrum. It goes from reversible to irreversible to periodontitis. It doesn't go linearly. In a primary tooth, you've got so many canals, so much going on in there that it's irreversible in one part, reversible in another. And it's that diagnosis that's the problem. It's not the technique. And getting a diagnosis right is what's key.
And it's hard to get that diagnosis because you never know where you are in that study.
And if the alternative is taking some child to have a general anaesthetic, then err on the side of caution and inform people. And like you, we see a lot of children who don't have the option of their parents bringing them back the next day because they're maybe stoned out of their mind, or they're not looking after them, or they're away somewhere else. So we often, you know, that balance as paediatric dentists I think is difficult.
I just want to say that in Dr. Cate's office, I've done 3 Smart Halls in the last 6 months to a year. And I thought that 2 of them were going to blow up for sure, and didn't. And one was on the nephew of a staff member. And that kid just can't wait to come back to see me all the time, and he was a phobic. So I'm just so grateful for the Hall technique, but I'm also grateful for silver-diamine fluoride to be able to put that on first.
Carson Bentley?
Yeah, I think it's related to your protocol of irreversible pulpitis, reversible pulpitis. I've never gotten endovascular as a kid, but I'm also not a pediatric dentist, so that real determination of the C fibers and the baby delta fibers as pediatric dentist.
Irreversible pulpitis is irreversible pulpitis, right? We don't have a trick to reverse that.
Can't hear in the back.
It's irreversible.
We got someone in the back who'd like to hear.
I think Carson Bentley was saying that we really need to distinguish between reversible and irreversible. Is that synopsis?
Well, just I live by your protocol to try to determine if this is appropriate. And I treat adults, and they do tolerate endovascular, and I can get a good diagnosis on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Peter, do you have anything to add? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I had another question regarding your protocol. Any changes in the amount? 1 drop, 2 drop? You're proposing as a diagnostic exam, and so some of my patients have 32 teeth, your patients have 20 teeth. What's the
So Carson's asking about the limit. So, hey Bernie. We recommended, based on the FDA data, based on the data that was submitted to the FDA, where enough silver-diamine fluoride was put either into their stomachs or into their skin or into their veins to kill them for mice and rats of male and female. Whatever. We have all the data. Unfortunately, the FDA requires these things. And based on that, we looked at those numbers and said, assuming that it all goes in, and that number would be that if it's put underneath the skin, how much does it take to kill a rat, a mouse, and therefore by abstraction a human? And if we put a whole drop, a whole 20 to 25 microliter drop in a 10 kilogram kid, what would be our safety margin? And that was 400 to 500 fold safety margin. So based on that, our UCSF protocol is to have that be the dose limit per day. So 1 drop for every 10 kilograms of body weight, which means that if you have, a 50 kilogram patient, what is that, like 120 pounds or something? That you could use 5 full drops, which is a lot of SDF. And so we felt like that was okay. And we also knew that, if we had a 10 kilogram kid and we used 2 whole drops, that we would have a 200 to 250 fold safety margin. And we felt extremely comfortable about, I feel extremely comfortable about that as well. So we just, there was no real science to this recommendation. There was no real science to this recommendation. It was a room full of experts who said, this makes sense, that limit sounds good. That 400 to 500 fold safety margin, we like that. But the FDA has something, go ahead.
Jeremy, only about 10% of what you put on the brush actually gets on the tooth.
Yeah.
Most of it remains on the brush. So the safety margin is actually much larger than you think it is.
So, yeah, and
like
so
all,
basically,
like all dental materials.
I think it would be a little nuts to put 10 drops of this stuff into one person. And that's what you really, yeah, Ellie?
Okay, I think I used my coupon to talk today. But the professor told me that with regard to the safety, 50 years of no adverse effect and no adverse report of use in Japan is a great evidence of safety. So basically just about safety. It's safe, because 50 years used in children, not even a single report.
Well, I do want to echo Nicola by saying that there's intentional observation and there's passive observation, and so this is passive observation. We don't, general anesthesia was safe until people started back up again measuring safety, and then they found out that kids at a very young age, when you see them when they're 7, have a lower IQ, measurably, a small difference, and so now the FDA put in a black box warning. So we do need to be aware that intentional observation is different than passive, which is how the FDA and the Japanese correlate works. It's not killing anyone. It's not killing anybody, but do we really know that it's absolutely safe? Well, we have one trial that we're working on publishing that shows that according to these metrics, it's safe. Nausea and all these other things.
Because there is one report of a death due to hydrofluoric acid.
Yeah, sure.
So
hydrofluoric acid.
I get the question all the time, and I don't know if others of you do. I got a phone call from Honolulu yesterday while I was in the airport coming here. We have a 40-pound child in the chair. We've got eight areas of decay. How many drops can we use? And what they're doing is they're reading your bottle. And I know that the instructions are to use less than what we're recommending, and so I think it's up to us to educate each of the doctors that, and I tell all of them that you need to do that because by law and through the FDA, you're required to put that in there, which is very important. It's not his fault, okay? But we need to give them the scientific information as doctors, which he can't do. He's not allowed to. But we can disseminate that information, and I think it's very important for us to give that when we lecture and when we teach this to other doctors, to disseminate that information to them, what Jeremy just said, okay? We need to spread that around, okay? Good.
Okay, so we're going to move forward with another topic, and I have seen all of 0 publications related to anything like this. I keep hearing this name, Michael Griffith, and I got to meet him a couple of times over the last year, and he's been doing some cool stuff that I wanted you guys to see. So.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Griffith, and I've been a private practice dentist in San Francisco for 40 years. For 5 years prior to that, I got my master's in oral biology, and I worked in soft tissue lesions, and I worked in politics at the Med Center and left. So I've been in private practice, and I've developed a practice with adults primarily, and this is a revelation of my experience, a true exploration of using SDF for alternative uses in adults. Off-label use wouldn't describe it. My friend Nate Kaufman was worked with John Featherstone and Jeremy Horst a while ago, and Nate 6 years ago got me very excited about SDF and the potential for arresting decay. And I had been using it gradually over that period of time, just for about 6 months. I decided using it for adult teeth near the pulp. I started on a good friend of mine who's an MD, PhD from the Med Center. He survived. I've had it done on myself, and I survived, so I said, okay, here we go. So I started applying it, and over the time, as time would have, as fate would have it, I inherited 2 practices in my area of older patients that a couple of dentists had retired and sort of fell into my lap. So all of a sudden, having a population of elderly adults, a lot with rampant decay, root decay, decaying by the pulp, and I had to do something for them rather quickly. I started off with a flyer and a disclaimer on this is an off-label use of an agent that's not even licensed by the FDA yet. My patient signing it, reading it, took forever. So at the end, I came down to a very short verbal discussion. I can say, today if we finish this, we can do a root canal, or I can pick the liquid on it and see if we can avoid the root canal. So far, no one selected the root canal. So I just wanted to see if it worked. I had 192 teeth. I started charting this retrospectively a bit. And from that population, I gathered a group of 115 patients with very deep decay. And I sort of came to ranking myself at various levels of depth. But they were equally divided in terms of age and sex. And I called them Class 1, Class 2, Class 5. Class 1 and Class 2 I decided not to include in the study because they were superficial. Even though I used silver nitrate on a lot of them, I didn't include them. Class 3 were 106 teeth that were within a millimeter of the pulp, and maybe closer or further, I'm not sure. Class 4 was within, I just differentiate this, a half a millimeter of the pulp. I believe I'm right on top of the pulp. Usually it's a large pulpal exposure to a lot of decay, so I felt definitely that would have been a root canal if you kept on going with it. Class 5 teeth were teeth that had already been treated endodontically, that needed buildups and posts, and the roots were quite decayed on them. And it's been rather dramatic. I just wanted to show you some examples of these. This is what I was calling a Class 3 lesion on the back of this molar here, 18. This is a typical Class 3, and it's bicuspid. The prior pulp chamber came up to about here, and so I was in secondary dentin on a lot of these cases. This is a pre-op film of root caries on these 2 teeth, post-op film, post-op on the molar as well. Because a lot of these patients had a lot of need. As you can see, they didn't come through unscathed, unfortunately. And this is a patient who worked at a dispensary in the dental clinic when I was a student. I won't tell you how long ago that was, but this was the Class 3 on her I did, which is pretty close to the nerve. She came back 2 years later with this horror story. So I filled out with silver fluoride and glass armor, Fuji 9. And that's been there for 4 months, asymptomatic. And what I've been astonished by these things is very few are symptomatic, in fact none. People don't complain about pain on these at all. And this is a pre-op view. This is in a different place. This is a pre-op temporary filling and a silver filling. And I think after going to a private lecture today, I realized I'm out of phase with dentistry and I'm still using silver. And I'll explain my technique with you in a minute on these. This is deeper lesions. This is post-op. And this goes right up to where the nerve chamber was. And as you can see in the filling. And that's silver filling. I started my career in oral medicine working with cancer patients. doing a lot of cervical fillings, class 5 wraparound amalgams that weren't bonded in the 60s. And here I am doing it later in life. It's sort of surprising to me where life takes us. This is another patient with what I call the class 4 lesion. Didn't wrap, some of that wrapped around the buccal, wasn't in the pulp, but these are quite deep lesions. And these are all asymptomatic. And I followed these people for, I'm getting confused with yourself in this. Okay, now I know it. I'm going the wrong way. Excuse me, folks. And the way, but the technique I use in this, with a lot of discussion of technique, standard high-speed prep, take the caries out grossly, use a standard disclosing agent, which is green, and when I get near the pulp, I want to have a green disclosing agent. And then just high speed or slow speed to go further down, and then apply silver fluoride. And the way I do that, I apply the silver, after I've got all the excavation as far as I'm comfortable conventionally, I apply the silver fluoride, wait 20 seconds to let it act as liquid, and then I just put a light on it, and then I excavate all the stained dentin with this black, leaving right over the pulp untouched. And I reapply the silver fluoride again, do the same thing, I excavate everything, goes right over the pulp. And usually my initial pulp recovery, this is, I've gone from, now I'm an ex-Catholic, now I'm a heretic again. I'm using dentin bonding agents, Clifford Leslie bond. I started using that for direct pulp caps 20 years ago. And I was putting it right over the pulp, and it worked really well. So I thought it would work fine here, or glass ionomer cement, and the final restoration to amalgam resin Fuji 9, or crown buildup. And over the course of 5 years, we've had really good luck. Of 106 caries, what I call class 3s, 74 have follow-up x-rays, going out 11 months. And the range of follow-up was 3 to 57 months. That was my friend from the Med Center. And only one of those turned into endo, and that took a year. But the class 4 caries right on top of the pulp, 35 with follow-up x-rays, 11 turned into endo. Those happened relatively early on. And most of those degenerations to endo weren't necessarily painful. There's no acute pain with those. And the class 5 caries for root canals, teeth were just great. So it's been 90% effective in avoiding root canals in these people. These are an aging population. They didn't want to spend money on root canals or on teeth or on crowns. So I just did the minimal dentistry and did fillings. I didn't do SDF as a direct pulp cap itself. If I ever got pulp exposures, I treat them with conventional pulp cap materials, MTA cement, and then I put silver fluoride on top of that. So I wasn't recommending it I wasn't using it just as a direct pulp cap. No post-op sensitivity, which is amazing. And I used silver nitrate and sodium fluoride to start with, because I could have the compounded locally. And then when Advantage came out, I started using that SDF. I couldn't tell any difference in the clinical outcome. The SDF doesn't sting quite as much as soon as the silver diamine fluoride, as the silver fluoride does. And in these patients, since I was doing it at the bottom of the lesions, there was no complaint about black stains, because at the bottom of fillings and crowns. Drawbacks: had no controls, not double blind, more recalls needed, mixed different fluoride agents. But I found it just astonishing. And I've started, it's part of my chairside setup now, and I use it on bad crown margins. If I'm worried about them, I just coat the margins with it. I use it on Alzheimer's patients. I have a few patients with Sjogren syndrome, and using it to manage them. I've had more success with them with the Alzheimer's patients. The Alzheimer's patients have trouble in the chairs, like working on a child again, controlling it and getting them to come back. But it helps. I mean, one of the guys I treated was my son's middle school teacher till his demise, and it worked reasonably well in him. So I'm quite impressed with it.
Could you comment more on that last point on the previous slide? Mixed, yes.
Yeah, I started off using dentin bonding agents Clearfield SC bond, 2 different kinds of that, right directly over the pulp dentin. I think not on the pulp itself, but on the dentin just on top of the pulp. And those seem to do very well. Of course, I have a large area of probably affected or altered dentin, but certainly bonded well. These were big enough excavations. There was a lot of bonding that went on. Not just, I wasn't relying on what was bonding over the pulp. And eventually I started using a deeper ones, the GIC. But this stuff has been remarkable in my practice. Has eliminated sensitivity, and it's been very easy on the patients. So, thank you.
Any questions, comments, discussion?
Yes.
Do you work with a local endodontist, or do you?
Yeah, he's not too happy about this. He doesn't believe me. He got the 11 that died, but yes, and it's been astonishing. Some of these really deep lesions, they just haven't gone bad yet. I assume more will die, but you know, if I get 2 or 3 or 4 more that pass on to endo, I could still consider that a success.
I have a question. So our good friend Nate Kaufman also treats older adults, and as did Karen Bergshaw until she moved back to Oregon. And so one of the things that, I'm going to speak loudly, one of the things that Nate would tell me is that the limitation that he would see with silver fluoride, that there were 2 things. One of them is the depth of penetration. That his description was that in older adults, some of these lesions have grown so slowly over time that the bulk of the lesion itself is really deep.
Right.
So that's one, just have you had that experience? And 2 is that as he's seen older adults go towards, progressing towards death, in particular dementia or just physiologic shutdown, he sees lesions that had really successfully responded to silver diamine fluoride start back up again, that they were arrested for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and he keeps putting it on every time he sees them, but then he could tell, he said he could almost tell that people are starting to shut down when their lesions start back up again. So I wonder if you would share if you've had any of that experience.
These are all encased. All these root caries I've done were excavated, and they're all encased now. So whatever's there, you may delayed release of fluoride or some more toxic effect in the cells. But
any other things on older adults in particular, Kate?
This isn't on older adults, but you're identifying what I see as something I hope that we develop out of this. One is the terminology. Like if we're identifying how large the caries are, as we're watching and seeing the effect of the silver fluoride, it's like, okay, if it's E2, we apply it twice, 3 times at 2-week intervals. So I think that what I would really like to see is having a common terminology and then a common protocol, and then looking at those outcomes so it becomes, we can all look at our results in more of a standardized fashion.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah. Calibration.
Calibration. Best practices.
I didn't know if I was applying this 2 or even 3 times on the pulp. And I don't know if that gets more toxic for the pulp or not. I'm right there.
Within that one session.
Yeah. I can't apply it again.
Right.
I know a lot of studies looked at Clearfield SC as a direct pulp capping agent, and they've been published in the 90s, and they showed very good results, much better than calcium hydroxide or any other direct pulp capping, but was never really welcomed here in the U.S.
Well, I got that off of Ray Berlotti, and he's been promoting it for a long time.
Yeah, and Charles Cox.
Yeah, right, that's right.
Well, silver nitrate's used on burn victims, like, I mean, and silver impregnated cloths,
right?
so I wouldn't be afraid of the pulp.
It's a much lower percentage. It's a much lower percentage used in the bandages because at a much higher percentage you can actually cause some damage to the skin.
And that's one thing where, you know, I haven't gotten rid of my silver nitrate bottle, even though I'm using silver diamine fluoride, is that if I'm going to hit the pulp, I know that, you know, I mean, do I know what's going to happen? No. Are there studies on healthy, you know, teeth that are going to be extracted for ortho purposes, where they get really close to the pulp and put it on and then extract later and do the histology and everything looks hunky-dory? Well, but that's not in the context of inflammation. So, like you're saying, I think silver, that's where I would want to use silver nitrate, because we know that fluoride interacts with nerves in a bad way, right? Fluoride's a nerve toxin. So if I don't know that silver nitrate fluoride is going to be the right answer for that, we can still go back to silver nitrate, which is a coagulant reverse also. So we've done that for like the really, really deep ones where there's no abscess yet. Sandra?
Yes, can you hear me? I was wondering if you determined initially when you did this deep lesion removal, if you determined the hardness of the lesion, the color of the lesion, and the moisture. Do you have any parameters there? And also, what was your removal peripheral for the seal of those restorations?
What was the last question?
The peripheral removal.
Peripheral removal?
And the depth of the lesion, of how much you remove. Did
Right.
you go by the color? Did you go by the hardness, the moisture? How
Color
do you
the hardness,
determine
we're
how
still
far?
staying with either disclosing agent or the silver fluoride for the peripheral tooth. I remember that with the high speed and the slow speed, and I went by hardness as well. When I got down to the pulp, a lot of these restorations were done in secondary dentin. In fact, I'd say almost all of them. And you can feel the difference with the slow speed handpiece. I don't like high speed because I can't feel what I'm doing.
Okay, good, thank you very much, Michael. Yeah.
With respect to what Kate was asking, we really do need to think about the outcome that we're looking for. And not the outcome that dentists want, the outcome that patients want. And it's easy, hardness of the dentin on a slow-speed handpiece, that's not, no patient understands or even cares. They want to know that does it hurt? And is it because of the tooth, not gum hurt, but caries from caries? And do they lose the tooth before it should lose it? Do they have to have it extracted? That's the bottom line. And that's pretty easy for us to measure. In our simple, without doing a study, we know if a tooth is gone or abscesses or a real toothache, not sugar toothache. That's when it hits the DEJ. I mean, abscess toothache, irreversible plus applies the right ballpark. And if we just use those outcomes and not worry about how hard or how dark or, because I was going to ask you, you said it failed. You had failures that are stuck with you. But how long from the treatment to when you said it got larger? Is that a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years? And did the patient know the difference?
So I would love to have that be one of the discussion questions really that we've missed thus far. Didn't get that in there is how do we know when something's failed? Well, actually, no, that is a question. There we go, that's this question. How do we know when something's failed? And so that includes when, how long. So I'm not going to talk about my personal thing. I'm going to move on with the well taken, Marty. Peter, would you mind coming up and talking about some of the magic? So if anybody doesn't know Peter Milgram, this is the legend here.
So I started doing this because I take care of fearful people, and fearful people don't like dentists. And I just, tell you my one story. I think Dr. Craig will appreciate this. I'm missing one first permanent molar. So when I was a dental student, I'd never had a cavity. So when I was a dental student, I went through the class where everybody learned to do exams and give injections. Another dental student, a very bright senior, stuck an Explorer in my first permanent molar, and I jumped out of the chair. And then he proceeded to restore that tooth in the way that he was taught, which was he took, we were just beginning to use high speeds, right. Remember, I'm old enough for that. And he took a round burr and he did exactly what he was taught, which was to remove every bit of tooth decay that he possibly could. And then 35 years later, I was in New Caledonia and I bought a carrot to eat, and I bit down on the carrot, tooth broke in half. And I was just in the closal, and just broke in half, and then I had the tooth extracted. Okay? And I don't want that to happen to more people. And I think any of you who watch Dr. Craig's videos know that he doesn't want that to happen either. Okay, so I have two hats. I mean, one hat is that I'm a director of Advantage Arrest, and the other hat is I'm a university professor. And I'm going to mostly be wearing my university hat right now. So those of you who know me know that fluoride varnish was developed in the 1960s, and came to the United States, got cleared by the FDA in 1995 as a medical device. It's never been cleared for caries. I started smuggling fluoride varnish in 1980, first from Europe and then from Canada, where it was more enlightened than we were. And I started smuggling silver diamine fluoride, saffuride, in from Japan in 1999 after I read some of the work that had been going on in Hong Kong. So I'm a public health person, and what I want is for care to change. And I sort of see this big picture of, you know, how do you get change? And one of the problems in the U.S. in particular is it's extremely provincial. That most U.S. dentists do not know what goes on in other countries, and they're not aware that dentistry in the United States is not necessarily the best in the world. And you know, that's a dirty little secret. So it means that you know, we have to do a whole bunch of things, including deal with the regulations, in order to be able to get practice in the United States to change. And so you know, part of my job has been to try to see if I can get the U.S. to change. But so what I'm going to do is just give you a sense of this. It took, so silver diamine fluoride, silver rest in the U.S. is regulated as a medical device, like fluoride varnish and like a lot of other dental materials. And the reason for that is it took 7 years of constantly dealing with the FDA in order to get it made a device. That's the lowest bar we have, okay? And they didn't really want to do it. Okay, it's not, they're a public health agency, but they don't see themselves in that way, okay. Other countries are watching what's going on here, and they're saying, okay, when the FDA, because many countries either accept, you know, because of the homogenization of regulations in Europe, for example, that when something gets cleared or approved as a drug in the US, there's a high probability you'll be able to get it approved in other countries. Okay, so we got silver diamine fluoride cleared as a medical device in the US. Now it got cleared in Canada. But because of the nature of Canadian regulations, it's cleared for caries in Canada. The government of Sweden is now allowing a study with the elderly with advantage arrest. I mean, we're providing the material. Right? You have it already in South America. You have it obviously in Australia. You know, you've got it in Japan, although largely not used in Japan for treatment of caries because of the way their insurance programs work. You know, in the U.S., we say, well, it's cleared for, like fluoride varnish was cleared as a treatment for sensitivity in a cavity liner, but we don't care, and we have our insurance companies pay for it for the treatment of caries. Well, in Japan, it doesn't work that way. Okay. And so there are a whole lot of steps. And you know, it's quite possible, for example, that if we get the FDA to eventually clear silver diamine fluoride as a drug for caries, that then the Japanese might very well be able to go back and say, now it's really for caries. I think the same thing will happen in Europe. That once the FDA buys into this as it is for caries, then lots of other countries will sort of fall into place. What I can tell you about this is that, first of all, those of you not from the United States should know that there's only one dentist in the whole of the FDA that works on drugs. Okay? There were two. One guy retired, and because of the hiring freeze from the president, he's not being replaced. Okay? So there's one dentist. Okay? And this person doesn't just do dentistry. So you can imagine the barrier, even within the bureaucracy, to actually try to change this. What did happen was that silver diamine fluoride was given expedited status. It's the first time in the history of the FDA that something for dentistry was put on the expedited list. It's called breakthrough therapy status. It was done because of the deaths of children. It was done because of all those gruesome pictures of children with early childhood caries. It finally got to them. Even the people who are not dentists at the FDA, which is the largest body of the people on the committees making decisions, they finally sort of got it. They saw something and said, oh yeah, this is really gross. Children are actually dying of this, okay, or dying of the treatment of it. So now it's on a different regulatory path. I cannot tell you what the length of time is for that regulatory path. But I can tell you, I hope it doesn't take another 7 years. Is that fair? So I think, in summary, we're making a lot of progress. I beat on my friend the dentist at the FDA about their clearance of fluoride varnish. Okay? I beat on them. I said, don't let that happen again. Don't do the same mistake twice. Okay? Because they can't put the cat back in the bag. And those of you who know, I often say that we have no clue whether fluoride varnish works anymore because it's been changed so much in the United States. And when it gets changed in the United States, it means it gets changed everywhere because these are multinationals largely based in the U.S. Okay? So we don't want the same thing to happen. We want to develop the science, develop all the clinical applications, and get them out there and get this discussed and move this field along. And that's where the regulation really, that's the part of the regulation that interests me and why, I'm kind of working on it. So that's my short explanation of where we are.
I have two questions, and they're the name of two continents. So Europe and Africa. So you mentioned one thing about Europe. My understanding is that medical devices in Europe are actually much easier to get moved forward, not drugs, but medical devices, than in the United States because ultimately the responsibility is on the company. I know nothing about Africa, so it's oversimplification, but do you think it will become available in Europe? And what do you think about Africa? I think that's the continent that's not represented here. Nobody is working on it in Africa, as far as I know.
That's not true.
Except the next presentation. That's another way of introducing things. But any comments?
Well, there are probably Europeans in here that probably would be better qualified to answer the question about Europe. I think the answer is yes, because there are investigators and clinical scientists in Europe who are interested in this. I think that the barriers to adoption in Europe are just as great as they are in the U.S., maybe even greater. I've had the experience of dentists in Scandinavia saying to me, it kills teeth, and all kinds of other kind of statements that are, that sound a lot like what you might hear in the suburbs of San Francisco. So I think that's going to be. I don't think that the regulation is more lax. And I find it very difficult to believe, based on what I do know about the European drug regulation, assuming Europe stays together and they actually have one drug regulatory agency, that it will be easier. But I do think that the studies are starting to happen, which will push it in that direction. One of the problems with all this stuff is that the deep pockets in our industry don't get behind things like this. They don't invest in this kind of work. So as a consequence, the deep pockets are not, the application fee to the Food and Drug Administration in the United States to get a drug approved is $1 million, okay? And every clinical trial that the FDA requires, based on Congress ordering the FDA to recover all its costs. So $1 million application fee, $1 million for every clinical trial that they require that has to be evaluated. Okay, so you're going to have a minimum of at least preclinical studies, at least one phase 2 study, 1 or 2 phase 3 studies. You start counting the millions. Okay, and that's before you actually pay for any of the studies. So there are lots and lots of things that are going to slow down this process. I don't know how the fees work in Europe, but I suspect that the companies have to pay in Europe as well. It's the small guy trying to get this done. It's not the big deep pockets of the big companies that could potentially make this happen faster. But I guess I would say is that the big companies are very conservative, and they tend not to invest in things that they consider to be speculative. And this has been in the category of speculative. There's also patent issues, as Dr. Craig will tell you. There are all kinds of issues about whether you can make money, because you can't patent SDF. So there are a lot of things that affect the company's willingness to invest in dealing with the regulatory authorities. Bottom line is we need the studies in order to support the regulatory movement in the right direction. Thank you.
So speaking of Africa and many other continents, I would like to invite Steve and Marcus Steffen to give the next presentation.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's a real honor to be here with all of you. You're my heroes. It's just amazing, this path we've been on for the past 15 years or so. And so just as a quick who I am, Stephen Duffin. I'm a general dentist. I have a general practice in Kaiser, Oregon. I'm primarily focused on public health programs, patients with special needs. So, okay, thank you. So this tool has been enormously powerful in changing the population that I treat. It's incredible. So I also am a medical director for a device company meant to take this technology to the developing world where most of the untreated tooth decay is. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that together with my son Marcus. And Marcus is going to have a lot more interesting stuff, so I'm going to go real quick. If you're interested in the science and the technology that we've collected about this journey, this is a website that we've developed, mmclibrary.com. I encourage you to go there. By the way, this video, which we gave you a disclaimer we're recording, will be on that website, and hopefully we can share this message with our colleagues as we go forward. So again, a special thank you, a real honor to follow Peter Milgram, and I want to thank Peter Milgram personally for introducing me almost 15 years ago to silver fluoride. I never heard of it in dental school. I don't know how many of you have. Never heard of it. And I'm at a conference with Mike Shirklev, and we're listening to Peter, and he said, well, we've got this stuff, we've got this. There's this other stuff out there which isn't in the United States called silver fluoride. And I just said, what's that? So that's how I got introduced to silver fluoride, tape fluoride in Japan. And it started me on a journey, and so I started looking at the literature on silver fluoride, more than 15 years ago. And I started looking at the references to the early papers, and I found references to actually three key individuals. One is W.D. Miller. W.D. Miller is an American dentist practicing in Berlin in the 1880s. He's probably the first truly scientifically trained dentist in the world. A remarkable individual. He's the author of the book, The Microorganisms of the Human Mouth. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's amazing. W.D. Miller was working in Robert Koch's laboratory in Berlin while medical microbiology was being invented. And he was studying tooth decay. And he was taking oral bacteria and killing them with different chemical pharmaceutical agents, including silver compounds, in the 1880s. And he wrote about it. So there's a library at the University of Michigan which is dedicated to his history. This microscope is at that museum at the University of Michigan. So once again, he was part of the group at Robert Koch's that was discovering, what causes disease and how do we use medicine to treat disease, all of these discoveries. The next person that was really important is G.B. Black. Wow. We all heard about him in dental school. I heard about him a little bit in dental school. He taught us how to cut holes in teeth. Okay, I discovered later that he's an absolute genius, not only the father of dentistry. I had a book that taught me how to cut holes in teeth. I found out he wrote a book called Volume 1, Pathologies of Hard Tissues of the Mouth, in 1908, that I didn't know anything about until about 10 years ago. I ordered this book, and it's just a masterpiece. And in this book, especially the chapter on children's dentistry, is where I learned that G.V. Black invented the medical management of caries with silver nitrate. And he described exactly how to diagnose the correct treatment, how to evaluate the outcomes. And so I learned from G.V. Black and from this textbook. I highly recommend, if you've not read Volume 1, G.V. Black, it's worth it. Absolutely. So here's G.V. Black and W.D. Miller. They were both using silver compounds in the 1880s, 1890s, right up into the 1930s. The next person that I want to talk about is Percy Howe. Percy Howe is the first clinical director of the Forsyth Institute in Boston, one of the foremost dental research institutions in the world. Percy Howe was so focused on using silver nitrate to arrest caries that they used to call silver nitrate Howe's solution. It's quite a remarkable story. And so I learned about these three individuals, and what I found is that what they had in common is that they were all using medicine to treat tooth decay, not just strictly surgical interventions. And that medicine was silver nitrate, and here it is talked about in the 1934 version of Accepted Dental Therapeutics from the American Dental Association. So this is deep in our history. This image is from G.V. Black, who went to Colorado Springs in 1910 to find out what this stuff Colorado brown stain was. And of course, we know the story, it was fluoride. And we had kids who had these brown stains and fewer cavities. Well, here's G.V. Black, who just wrote a book about using silver compounds to arrest caries, discovering fluoride. So we're now beginning to put these stories together of the silver compounds and the fluorides. Then we go forward, okay, in time. And so today, these are a couple of kids from my practice, which is Shoreview Dental. And I'm so happy that I'm able to treat these kids, and this is what they look like when they leave, okay? 15 years ago, these kids might have been going to the OR with me to get all their teeth fixed, because I thought that was the highest standard of care, and I knew nothing about what Jeremy mentioned with respect to FDA black label danger of general anesthetics, or sedating children, or all of these problems, okay? I have eliminated all of that from my practice completely. So today we have silver compounds, silver diamine fluoride now is what we're talking about. It's being used all over the world. It's changed my practice. I would never go back to doing what I'm doing. I'm a happier dentist. My patients are happier. And so now I'm going to turn the time over to Marcus. He's going to tell you about the really important stuff.
That was all very important stuff.
All right, thank you everybody for your time. So pretty much, I kind of want to pick up where Steve left off, and as well as what you've all left off with. We all know that this is by far the most prominent infectious disease known to man, and in order to take this technology to the world, we have to be able to modify the procedure in such a way that it's so simple that you can use dental and medical auxiliaries, you know, even a school nurse or a teacher, because there's not enough dentists, there's not enough people to be able to go out there and treat people. And you have to be able to do it so simply that you can do it by yourself and treat a large number of people, because there's billions of people out there. Now before I go to the next slide, I want to make a little bit of a disclaimer. Like Steve, I'm part of No Decay as well. I'm the COO of that company, and I have a background in biochemistry, biophysics, and biomedical science. So once Steve really started getting into this and bringing it into his protocols, it really kind of caught on to me. So here's, as we all know, a little bit of a difference between the clinic and the real world. In the clinic, you have electricity, you have multiple staff, you have everything that you need, and the patients generally have insurance, Medicaid, or have cash. Now, in the real world, a lot of the people who don't have access to this care live in very rural areas, very limited access. They don't have access to the dentists, there's no electricity, and the government generally can't afford to treat everybody with standard dental techniques. So Steve kind of tasked me to modify his technique into a system that addresses each of these issues, that you can treat people out in the middle of the jungle. So based on Steve's original publication a few years back, you know, just very simply, you know, you take your bottle, transfer it to a DAP dish, you guys know the whole procedure, and then dry your cavity, SDF, fluoride varnish. Okay, so what I did is I went through an evolution of trying to take all of those ingredients and all the brush tips and put them into one unit. So we started trying with just 2 syringes next to each other. We tried to dry it onto micro brush tips that you can rehydrate. We tried even having 2 blister packs that you see fluoride varnish in, having them side by side, and came up with all sorts of different problems. But after all the R&D, I found a system that works very well, okay? And we've used it in Ecuador and Ghana, and I'll start to get into that a little bit more. Now, as John and multiple people have addressed, it's extremely important to dry that cavity. Okay, saliva is highly proteinaceous. Silver loves binding to protein, and I could go into the chemistry of it, but we don't have time. So it was very important to be able to have a source of compressed air that you can use to dry that tooth. So we had foot bellows. It works okay, but you're sitting there constantly pumping the thing each time you want to use it. You got a car tire, you know, it works okay, but a little more difficult to transport. compressed air, you can't refill the thing, so you have to keep bringing supplies. So I created the Air Anywhere. Behold. So it's very simple. It uses these, now it's technically a weed sprayer, but nothing's been put in it. Okay, it's completely clean. It allows you to create your own compressed air right out in the field. And being able to use standard dental air water tips so that you still have that high pressure. You pump this thing 20, 30 times and you can treat a full patient, if not two. So with these two technologies, we were able to go out into the field and treat people. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip this video because I kind of just showed you a little bit how it works. But the point is, you don't need electricity, and it's good to go for treating a series of patients. So here is a little video of us actually treating a child in Ghana using Air Anywhere as well as the device itself. And there's no audio, but it doesn't really matter. You've got the Air Anywhere. Now you're using the silver nitrate or SDF side. Flip it around, and you've got your fluoride varnish. So one hand, you can dry. The other hand, treat with both reagents. Very simple, very fast. And the benefits are you don't need electricity, you don't need suction. Kid just spits right there in a little garbage can, and it's all good to go. Very quick. And with our system, these tips, you just swap them right out between patients. There's a plastic sleeve. It's very, very clean. You're able to go between different patients, and this thing can treat multiple people. Up to 30 very large cavities, and depending on the population, that could be 5 or 6 people with 6 very large ones. And interestingly, when we were working with the Ministry of Health in Ecuador, they tasked us to try and compare the SDF protocol in our unit does to traditional dentistry for treating a cavity. A 90% reduction in cost, only on the direct costs, not the preventative downstream. So this whole protocol that you guys are doing the research on is really going to transform the economics of how we treat dental disease and allowing these smaller countries to be able to treat their populations. So these are the cute little guys. There's a place just outside of Ibarra in Ecuador where it's a higher elevation little school where we had found some children to be able to treat, and we worked directly with the Ministry of Health. Now there's 2 schools. The one at the higher elevation where it's grades 1 through 9, and then a disability school. 165 kids at the regular school, 65 at the disability school. And we did about a 12-month demonstration, and we're going to be going back in maybe April or May to collect 2-year data. So here's just a picture of the primary school. The kids are just getting the instruction. There's the teacher as well as the Ministry of Health dentist. By day 1, when we started to assess, we noticed that half of the kids had daily pain. They couldn't sleep very well, they couldn't eat, they couldn't play. It was affecting their standard quality of life. And we noticed this across Ecuador, and it's probably pretty much the same here. So the interesting thing is that by the second application, 1 week later, so between the initial treatment and the second one, no pain. None. Not a single one. None of the kids were scared of us anymore because we're not drilling, we're not giving them shots. And we already started to see that charcoal briquette hardness, which is nice. Okay. Now this is up to the second treatment. So now let's go over to special needs school. This is a much more interesting case because these children are very dental phobic. Any noise, any sort of pain they feel, their body just twitches out of control and you can't treat them. It's just like a little normal child who's just 5 years old and terrified, right? So interestingly, again, by the second application, there's evidence of cavity rest, no pain and no phobia. That's what matters with these disability people, this disability. At any age, it's the same problem. So I want to give you a quick little demonstration. So by the time of second treatment, see how calm he is. Okay, the first time we came there, he was terrified. Squirming around, very difficult. We had to have 3 people to be able to hold down his arm, hold down his leg so that we could do it. Now watch when he starts to twitch. It's because of his standard air-water system that is electrically powered, creates a lot of noise. And I don't have the video, but when we use the Air Anywhere, which doesn't have any of those types of issues, you have no phobia and it's no twitching at all. Again, 50% had the daily pain. Overall, granted with the disability school, you can't really get them to verbalize that appropriate with, and between weeks 1 and 2 of treatments, first and second, none had pain. And initial first blush analysis of the data based on comparing the number of surfaces that were cavitated relative to the ones that were arrested, we had between 95 and 97% success as confirmed and observed by the Ministry of Health dentists themselves. Now we're working with Jeremy and other people at UCSF to help validate that data, so that we can get out in a publication. But preliminary and based on what we visually observed, it was highly effective. Now, in order to demonstrate that this protocol and the system works anywhere in the world, we had to go to another continent, to really demonstrate the effectiveness of it. So we went to Ghana, found a school in Petue, which is very far from the capital, and we found a school with 300 kids, similar to Ecuador, ages 3 to 13. We assessed, did all the treatments, and we did the whole 3-treatment protocol. And in Ghana, Coca-Cola and all those candies hadn't worked their way all the way out. So only about a third of the kids versus almost all of the kids in Ecuador had cavities. So out of a third of those children, the same thing we saw. By the time of the second application, no pain, no phobia, everybody was happy. Now, this data is still being validated, and I want to make one stipulation. Ghana is unique because it taught us something important about protocol. Protocol is so important, especially the drawing. By the time we went to do the 3rd treatment, I believe, we actually, the air anywhere started to malfunction. We weren't able to as thoroughly dry the teeth, so the percentage was lower, and preliminarily I remember seeing about 75 to 80%, but that was because the protocol was altered and was not being able to be done appropriately. So, I tried to keep it as quick as I could. Thank you.
Maybe you have questions for Steve and Marcus? Anybody want to add about getting this stuff into other countries and continents?
Do you have any feedback from the parents of the kids who received the treatments, and what are you doing on the frontiers?
So, very good question, very important. Number one, I didn't mention the consents that were part of this. We had consents at every level, from the Ministry of Health, the local school districts, the PTA, parents, so we had a high level of consent. We had a disclosure about the color change with parents and teachers. Was there going to be a concern? And again, our experience now with close to 600 children in South America and Africa, not one complaint about the color change. Just happy that they're not in pain. And we always say, if the color is a problem, we can fix that. All right, and we do have a technique for covering the dark stain simply, easily, and there are a few people who have requested that. But once again, it seems that we dentists are greatly concerned about that, but parents are not.
Would be nice when you write a publication to add that information.
Thank you.
Even though it was not systematically collected, the data, it's an anecdote that could go into the discussion.
Thank you.
What was the age range of the kids?
In Ghana or Ecuador? 3 to 14 in Ghana and about the same in Ecuador.
I'm sorry, what was it again?
3 to 14 years old, grades 1 through 9.
Oh, okay.
In both schools. Disability, the age was a little more variable. They could be all the way up to 19 and 20. Yes.
How did you come up with 3 treatments in 2 weeks?
So this big question of what's the right protocol, we're all working on that. And what's really cool is we're all doing things just a little bit different. And so then we're talking about what results are you seeing, what results are you seeing, how can we get to that optimal protocol that gives the best results with the least investment of money and time, etc., the least adverse effects. We don't know that. So the protocol that we've developed of 3 applications at 1-week intervals was really developed in my practice over a long period of time. I realized that doing it once didn't work, okay, and then we spread it out over a long period of time, and it worked a lot, but then we decided to collapse it. So now we're at 2 or 3 intense interventions in a short period of time. I found that the fluoride varnish piece was really important because I saw saliva contamination affecting the silver staying in the lesion. Now, John and Kate have developed this GIC, SMART, okay? So I've been adopting and learning that, okay, going from silver, nitrate, because we didn't have SDF, fluoride varnish, to now silver and GIC. I think we're headed in the right direction. But I think we're learning. Don't have the answer to that.
And I want to add to that. Okay, so let's think about it logically. All right, Steve's original protocol went all the way up to 12 weeks. And then Steve started to try and bring it down just because people necessarily can't stretch it out that far, and there's all kinds of time constraints. So in the real world, you have to think about how many times you're actually going to be able to see them. If you see them once, you know, that GIC protocol directly on top of the SDF is great, and it works very well in different clinical situations it's been experienced. Now, if you want to do those 3 treatments and you're able to see them 3 times, in my opinion, logically it makes sense that you could actually do that in even 3 days. Okay? The purpose of the fluoride varnish is to protect the silver-diamine fluoride. That's the only main purpose in regards to us. The fluoride is great, that's fine. So that's gone in less than 24 hours. So that means the proteinaceous saliva can come in, flush around inside that cavity, and suck out whatever it wants once that's gone. So logically it makes sense that the next day you could apply that second treatment. And we've actually had some patients who drove and flew all the way across the United States to get our treatment, and we had to do it in a series of a few days. And it worked successfully. But these are all still early and anecdotal to some degree.
This year we will collect 2-year data in Ecuador and 2-year data in Ghana. And we'll be launching a 5,000 children project in Bolivia this summer. So we're ramping up to community intervention.
But you're still going to do 3 treatments?
So that's still under discussion right now, you know, what that optimal protocol is. And when you have a huge project involving 5,000 children, we have the possibility, with IRB approval, of course, to changing our protocol slightly to see if it affects the outcome. So we don't know. This is really a humanitarian project that we're trying to collect a little bit of data about. It isn't real science, okay? And we leave that to the real scientists to do.
Thanks, sir. All right, great job. All right, so I think what we'll do is we'll do one more talk. As always for lectures, and as anticipated, we're going longer, but I think this has been really useful, the discussions that have been happening. I hope you agree. So after this next very important talk, we'll take a break, get some snacks, come back, talk about clinical trials, ongoing mechanistic work, and then we'll break into groups. So I can't tell you how much I've learned from my friend Joanna over the years, and in particular, she said, "What about the dissemination work?" When I was planning this, and I said, "What's that?" So she's going to educate us on this important implementation dissemination work.
So I'm Joanna Penha Cruz, I'm at the University of Washington, and I will be talking a little bit about implementation. We talked a lot about the biology and efficacy of silver-diamine fluoride today. And there are studies on effectiveness too, on patient outcomes. The idea of implementation science is to study, are the methods to promote the uptake of research findings into routine healthcare and clinical, organizational, or political policy contexts. So we are talking about uptake, sustainability, dissemination of silver-diamine fluorides. So we start from the premise that silver-diamine fluoride works. There are studies showing that silver-diamine fluoride arrests caries and prevent caries. Now, how do we go from there to practice? How can we transfer that evidence base to practice, to systems, to policy? And we can study how those things are going. It's a new product in the US, so it's a very good opportunity to understand how a new technology is adopted and how the different levels of the system are taking that new technology. So we could think about the barriers and facilitators to implementation that may arise at the multiple levels of the healthcare delivery. We are talking about the patients, the family, the community. We are talking about the provider team, the organizations, and the policy and the markets. So thinking about that, I think we can, when we go to the breakout sessions, think about what kind of studies could be done to try to understand and help others implement those those practices in their practices. That's the idea of implementation research. So we could look into different frameworks on how to study dissemination and implementation. One of those is the Consolidated Framework for Implementation Research, and there are 5 main domains that we could think about. So it's the intervention, so what is our protocol? But also we need to think about the outer setting, so what is the policy? What is our community? The inner setting, how is our organization accepting change? How can we implement those changes in our organization? And then organizations and communities are built up on individuals. So what are the personal beliefs of those individuals? What are the personal needs of the provider, of the organization, of the community, and of the patients? So having that framework help us understand the different levels that we can be studying. And then the process, the planning, engaging, executing, and reflecting and evaluating, the whole PDSA cycle. So in this framework, they also brought some things that we could be thinking about the intervention, like what is the source of the intervention? What is the evidence strength and the quality? Where are the gaps in the evidence? Are there a relative advantage of it? Can we adapt? Can we try it first before full implementation? How complex is it? How are we going to design it or package it? What's going to be the cost? Those are things that we need to be thinking about when we think of the intervention. Other things that we could be thinking is the outer setting, the inner setting, and the individuals. So I posed a few questions here. What is the protocol to implement in your practice? So we have a protocol developed by the UCSF. Can you try it first? How much can you adapt to your reality? Is it too complex that nobody will want to do it? What is the cost? Is there a benefit? The outer setting, what are your patient needs? What are their perceptions? We hear a lot the provider perceptions on silver-diamine fluoride. We have an implementation project going on in Oregon with Advantage, and extended practice dental hygienists are placing silver-diamine fluoride to prevent decay and to arrest decay in the community settings. We are not hearing complaints from the community. We are very grateful that this is happening at these schools and other community settings. But we need evidence, we need research on that so that others can use that experience and adapt to their reality too. So it goes into the acceptable in your community. What do your peers think of? Are there external policies and incentives? So to be able to do silver-diamine fluoride, there was a whole movement and a conscious efforts to change policy. And we are still working on that. So we have a CDT codes. More and more states are reimbursing for silver-diamine fluoride. But all this is a work in progress. And that can also be studied. We have an amazing opportunity to be understanding not only the intervention, but what is the outer setting? What is the the context that this change is happening? In the inner setting, we can think about the organizational climate. Do you have the structure and the resource? What are the structure and resource needed? Is the system ready to implement those changes? Are the providers ready to implement this change? Are the internal policies ready to implement this change? And then when we think about individuals, I think that's a mix of not only the individuals in the inner setting, but in the outer setting too. And what are the staff knowledge and belief about sodium fluoride? What kind of communication needs to be done in the inner setting and the outer setting so that the implementation can work? Do they know how to do it? That's the matter of self-efficacy. Are there internal policies and incentives to do it? And then thinking about the process. We need planning, engaging, executing, and reflecting. So what I wanted to bring here, this is a framework that is being used on implementation science. And those things, we can study how things are happening. We are doing things, but we can also reflect on how it's being done so that we can spread it to different environments. So that's the idea that I wanted to bring today. And it's a little bit different from effectiveness research, so we are thinking about the impact. It should be part of the dissemination and implementation efforts to also evaluate patient outcomes. So what is the impact on oral health, on quality of life, on satisfaction with care, and on cost? But what I wanted to point out is that an implementation research starts from the premise that there are evidence-based methods, and you want to implement it. So it is important to measure patient outcomes, but that's not going to be the main focus of your implementation science. It's the implementation science are more interested in what are the providers' readiness for change. What is the patient satisfaction with care or with that protocol? What are their beliefs? We should also be thinking about the impact of SDF on our communities too. But I wanted to bring that reflection here today.
Thank you, Joanne. So I think we could all use a little break. We're going to meet back in 10. We can wrap up a couple things and go from there.
To treat 6 people.
Okay, Arwa. So now we're going to talk about clinical trials that are ongoing so that we can all know what each other is doing, so that we can know what to expect. And we are having a couple changes of talks, and please no one go more than 5 minutes, please, so that we can actually talk to each other again, because that's really what a lot of us are here for. So we are going to hear from people that are actually doing these very difficult to do clinical trials. And first up is Dr. Arwa Owais, who's doing some really, really cool stuff.
Hello, everybody. Is my voice okay to the back? Okay, so I'm presenting what the group of the University of Iowa is doing. So it's not only my research, it's everybody's research that we're doing at the University of Iowa. We're actually doing 2 clinical trials, and they are registered at the clinicaltrials.gov. One is using silver nitrate and fluoride varnish, a modified Steve Duffin's protocol. And the other one is using silver diamine fluoride on early approximal lesions in adults. So one is in children using silver nitrate, and the reason we use silver nitrate is when we started our trial in 2014, it was Steve Duffin's presentations all over the world, and we wanted to utilize the product. SDF was not available in the United States, and we were very lucky to start this clinical trial. The other one is after the approval and after the visit of Dr. Milgram and Jeremy to the University of Iowa, we started thinking of utilizing this in approximal lesions and early lesions. The funding is from Delta Dental Bio Foundation and the College of Dentistry. So our first clinical trial is called Medical Management of Dental Caries Using Silver Nitrate and Fluoride Varnish in Children. And the purpose of the study is to compare the conventional treatment versus the use of silver nitrate only with fluoride varnish in children. So it's a double-blind, it's a parallel group, 2 groups study. Our population is the Amish children living in Kelowna, Iowa, and they've been there since the 1800s. They do not have access to regular dental care and preventive services. They do not really think that all kinds of fillings and drillings are necessary. They try to look for pain and infection when they treat their children. So it took us some time to establish connection with the community. Engagement was very important, and then we started our trial. It was approved by the University of Iowa and registered at the clinical trials, and children were randomized into 2 groups. Of course, we didn't have enough funding to go for one-to-one allocation, and we wanted to do more silver nitrate than what we could, so we did the random allocation of 2 silver nitrate per 1 conventional treatment. Please visit poster 3713 for details on the population, and that's going to be presented Saturday afternoon. And if anybody would like to have a copy of the poster, I will be happy to provide it. The baseline and outcome measures, we communicated with Dr. Nicola Innes based on the fiction trial data, and we wanted to compare the same baseline and outcome measures to see how does this work in the United States. We did a clinical examination based on clinical examination, but at the same time we had radiographic evaluation for teeth at baseline and progression of caries, because this is one of our outcome measures. We had child and parent questionnaires, and please visit another poster tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow morning for parent and children. Very interesting findings. Don't always listen to parents, listen to children. Okay? And we checked the pain and infection, quality of life, cost effectiveness, acceptability of treatment strategies. Outcome measures, mainly it's caries experience that's recorded, and we had periapicals and bite wings based on the AAPD guidelines for our population. Our outcome measures are mainly pain and infection, if they confirm having any pain during the visit. Just for your information, we do house visits because we rent an office every Saturday to go do our stuff, and our research was based on any pain and infection call. We go to their homes. They do not drive to Iowa City. They only have horse and buggies. Outcome measures based on quality of life, we utilize the fiction trial instruments, and we use the same questionnaires for children and adults. Take notes, 1816 is the poster presentation tomorrow at 11. Okay? And it's really interesting. Sometimes you really want to look at both sides of the coins when you talk about parents and children. Economic measures will be based on the dental visits, how much is the cost for the treatment, how many visits. As we know, restorative treatment might be done in 1 visit for 2 quadrants. Okay? While silver nitrate, our protocol is doing it 3 times based on communication and subgroup, discussions with the Amish. They didn't want to come for the 5 times like what Dr. Duffins has recommended when we started. Acceptability of treatment. We talked about acceptability regarding the appearance and the discoloration, and also about anxiety of dental care. Results. As of now, we have 102 children screened, 74 eligible, 26 in the conventional, and 48, in the silver nitrate group. It's very interesting that 4 children were randomized to the conventional group, but after that they dropped immediately from the study because Amish population want to use silver nitrate because they do believe in it. Okay, and they switched to the silver nitrate group. So our analysis was based on the intention to treat, and that's going to make some difference in our discussion of the results. Lessons learned from our clinical trial that's still ongoing, and we still didn't have finalized data beyond the 1 year. Open lesions that pack food are not good lesions to use silver nitrate only. Consider ART, SMART, GI plus ART, whatever you want to call it. Lesions that are encroaching on the pulp And I will have to quote the whole crown people with that. If you have a solid band of dentin, it's very safe to use silver nitrate and fluoride varnish. If you do not have a very solid band of dentin, sometimes it shows minor failures, major failures. And minor failures, I mean by minor failures, progression of the caries at the radiographic level, major failures having abscess teeth. And we did see some of these failures happen. Okay? And it's important to view, the silver products as an extra tool and not as an exclusion of any other treatment. So combining one tool with another is a smart idea. It's just good. Any questions about the first one? Am I good for the 5 minutes, or do I have 1 more minute? 1 more minute. He said that, right? Okay, our next trial is the effectiveness of the silver diamine fluoride in arresting early approximal lesion, and that's a clinical trial. I wanted to mention it because it's a master's degree that Dr. Sandra Guzman and I are co-mentoring, and we're using subtraction radiography for the protection, for the progression of the lesion. So the purpose is to evaluate the silver diamine fluoride in these kinds of lesions, early approximal lesions, and we're going to be using subtraction radiography over 2 years. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dr. Braga, you want to come up? I'm very excited that we have people from all over the world doing trials.
We do actually.
And Mariana Braga is going to talk about some of her ongoing work. Is this the first situation? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mariana Braga. I'm from Brazil. I'm from the University of São Paulo. And we are working with silver diamine fluoride, especially in initial or more initial lesions into enamel, clinically into enamel, or including non-cavitated and cavitated caries lesions. This is a part of a big project, including 3 clinical trials in different situations. So our proposal, since we have evidence for diamine fluoride in silver diamine fluoride for arresting dentin lesions and for preventing lesions, using initial lesions, especially in difficult conditions for controlling biofilm in order to arresting them. So this is the University of São Paulo to show you. And a lot of things of these trials we work with this mobile unit with children, including preschooler children and also babies. And we are working exactly on these conditions I said. We don't have experience in research for using silver diamine fluoride in more advanced lesions as exposed before. So we used a single application because we are trying to reduce other sources of variation because we have a lot of protocols. We are working in a systematic review looking for protocols, and we have a lot of variations among them, including number of applications, reapplications, and other kind of sources. And this is an example of using approximal lesions. We are using after temporary separation because we use the temporary separation for doing the diagnosis, the detection of the approximal lesions. And that is why it's how we have used the product. We are using at the moment the Brazilian silver diamine fluorides because, as Professor Aranita said, we don't have the fluoride in Brazil. This here, cariostatic, is another version, 10% silver diamine fluoride that we used to use in Brazil before. Now we usually use the 3%. So we are working in a systematic review, including silver diamine fluoride for erupting molars, and it seems it's a good option. That's why we invest in our investigation in that. One of the protocols I said is in proximal lesions of primary and permanent molars of adolescents, the permanent ones, and we are comparing with infiltration and only flossing. So we try to blind the participants, reproducing all steps in all conditions. And we note that's a good idea because all of them didn't notice it despite the pain. It's worse in the infiltration because of anesthesia and the time, but the compliance were similar and other kinds of things we expect from a control group and a placebo. So the study with primary tooth teeth are finished now, and I will present some results tomorrow in the morning. We are also working with erupting permanent molars because we did some years ago when I was an undergraduate student a pilot study, and then we intend to show if the silver diamine fluoride could be an option for controlling initial lesions in erupting permanent molars that for us pediatric dentistry is a deal. And for the proximal lesions, we observed a very low progression in our sample, like 8% of progression. And then we are working now with Markov models to simulate more progression during the time, because we have in primary teeth a problem and a solution that is exfoliation. So if you don't have the progression in 2 years, maybe some teeth are exfoliated and you don't have any more. So for this study, we observed a similarity between 3 treatments, as I said. But if you use a subgroup analysis, considering only the children with caries experience, we note that silver diamine fluoride tend to be better than control and similar to infiltration. But when you consider the costs, you will save much more money besides the comfort that was better for the silver diamine fluoride. And the other protocol we are testing is in babies, comparing silver diamine fluoride and fluoride furnish. That is the option for pediatric dentistry in Brazil to control initial caries. And this study is ongoing, and we expecting the next month have the first results for the 1-year follow-up. Another concern is the aesthetics that some of you said. Obviously, we are more concerned being a situation like that. That's much more has much more impact on parent perception. But we are also testing that in our protocols, in 3 of them, and our results have shown that despite the treatment, despite the treatment, the control was similar to the SDF results. So for initial caries lesion, parents don't mind to use and to get staining in teeth, despite our previous results when showing pictures, that is the dentist's point of view, impact much more. So probably when you showing the context with many times we have cavities and other things that were much worse, they accept very well. I would like to thank you and for the opportunity to share some points of our studies. This is our pediatric team in the university, and this is my baby.
Information in a very short amount of time, nicely done. Specific questions for Mariana? Great, so we'll move right on then to, if you don't mind, Dr. Griffith.
Yeah, when you're doing occlusal treatment on those, do you treat those ones you can see a shadow from the side from a bite wing? If they have a shadow at the enamel junction, do you still treat those?
For the occlusal, we are looking for the clinical condition only, but in the pilot study, we noticed that when you have the scores 1 and 2 of ISDS, you usually don't have the radiolucence in the junction.
Okay.
But I think it could be a possibility that we do in the approximal study.
Okay.
Thank you.
Margarita or Emily? And you're gonna stand in no slides, is that right?
No slide.
Yeah. Don't mind me then.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I don't have slides because I didn't think I could make it. So I'm glad I thank you for the invitation. I'm glad I can be here. I'm going to be really, really quick since I don't have slides and you don't want to hear me for very long. So we have, if you look at clinicaltrials.gov, we have 2 clinical studies. One is a randomized clinical trial going on. The other one is just a clinical study. The randomized clinical trial, we started because one of the first questions that we had in implementation in our clinic is how does this compare to restorative intervention, which is the obvious alternative of care right now for these cavitated lesions. So it's a randomized clinical trial compare using SDF versus conventional restorative treatment for cavitated lesions. And we're targeting lesions that are exposing dentin clinically, so ICDAS 5 and 6 type of lesions. We do it, the children are 2 to 10. The application of SDF is once every 6 months. And I don't have any data to show you because the trial is ongoing. We're looking at major and minor failures, such as the criteria that Nicholas Innes with her Hull Crown studies uses. We have radiographs in this study because that was the kids are being seen as part of, this is not a community setting, this is a dental clinic where they have full access to everything else that we would have in dental clinics. So of course we have x-rays and everything else. And we're looking at the 2 primary outcomes were not only the disease-related or restoration-related outcomes that you could imagine, but it's patient acceptability. We're doing this trial in 2 sites of the University of Michigan treats. One is a very underserved community in Flint, in Michigan, which is a community that serves primarily underserved Black children enrolled in Medicaid. And the other community is in Ann Arbor, the University of Michigan Pediatric Dentistry Clinics, that is really a referral center for the whole state. But we see a wide range of population, sociodemographic and ethnic and race. And so we're looking at patient acceptability, at providers' acceptability, at time, at cost, as well as the disease outcomes. So be in the lookout in the years to come as we get data. We'll be presenting data. The second study that, yes?
Are you covering it with glass ionomer or
No,
not?
no. This was based on the existing randomized trials in the literature. This was as an alternative to restorative care. So if you could not provide restorative care, would this be an acceptable strategy? And so no coverage. This is just SDF painted on the cavity, dry. You heard the protocols. Yes.
No, that was my question. Using SDF versus versus.
We're using SDF. Yes.
How do you remedy the ethics of holding the current standard of restorative care?
Well, this is a randomized clinical trial, so it went IRB review and everything else that had to, the patient has to sign, of course, a consent, and we are doing it in part because, I mean, that's the research question, right? Is this an adequate alternative to the standard of care for these lesions? And patients need to consent to the treatment like anything else, and it's entirely randomized, so of course they don't know which of the 2 arms they're going to get. But it was approved by our ethics committee, and we monitored those kids closely, though, even though we apply SDF, of course, if they're restored at the beginning. If they apply SDF, it's once and then it repeated at 6 months, but we monitor them very, very closely. And not only asking for pain, and asking the parents for pain or any concerns, the kid will be brought back into the office, etc. Yeah, so like any other randomized clinical trial.
Are you taking radiographs at that follow-up application?
Yeah, so we are, the IRB requested, we had suggested that we were going to take radiographs annually, but these are high caries risk kids because of the size of lesions that we are targeting. And so the IRB requested that we have radiographs every 6 months, on top of whatever else they might be getting in our dental setting, which was part of the reason we didn't want to take radiographs just because of the study, because the kids are part of our clinics. So we were already having views of many of these teeth, but the IRB, because this is experimental, right, it's not considered a drug. So, so we are taking X-rays of the teeth under particular views to make sure that there's absolutely no consequence to the pulp. Yeah. Okay, so that's undergoing, so I don't know what to tell you other than it's undergoing. The second study that we have going on is SDF is being used in our pediatric clinic and our graduate clinics, and it's going to start in our predoctoral clinics also very soon. And one of the questions in our graduate operative, we have a graduate program that is Cariology, Restorative, and Digital Dentistry. And as part of that graduate program, they see a lot of root caries, a lot of older individuals, high caries risk, dry mouth, etc. So a lot of root caries. And there were a lot of questions based on the literature on what were the bacterial changes that happen when you treat these root caries lesions. And so this is not a randomized trial. We didn't have enough funds to actually do this. So it's the preliminary data to maybe do something else. But we're collaborating with the Foresight Institute and using their Hummings technology, which is a next generation sequencing technology where you can look at over 600 species. And so we collect samples of the lesions before we paint SDF. Then SDF is painted on the root caries lesions. These are active soft root caries lesions. And then the patient is followed up for a certain period of time. When they come back, we assess hardness and color, etc., and we take samples again. And so we are almost done with that study. Samples will be sent to Foresight, I believe, next week, maybe. And so hopefully by next year, you'll know some of the results of that study.
Did you say that was before and after, or just?
Before and after. Well, before and 1 month, 1 month and a half after.
And you said that you're doing sequencing of?
Bacterial species. So we're looking at about 600 species using Hummings, which is the next generation sequencing technology with Foresight. So Foresight is doing the bacterial analyses. We're doing all the clinical sampling and everything else. Yeah.
How many applications of SDF?
Just one. Just one application of SDF. Yeah.
Are you looking into any microbes related to periodontal diseases?
So yes, Hummings captures captures a lot of species. So we just want to see what we know based on the data and the literature that one application of SDF we expect that if we're enthusiastic, an 80% success rate of lesions hardening, right? But we know there's going to be some of those lesions that might not harden, and so we want to see what those changes are so that we can use that preliminary data maybe for something else. So yes, we will capture a whole range of pathogens that are not only the traditional caries pathogens, but are...
One quick question. Now that study from Foresight, do they only determine the presence of different species or proportionality in regards to percentage of the population?
Yeah, so it's proportionality to what the 600 species are.
Relatively.
Right.
Okay. 16S microbiome.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's to what they're sampling.
Okay.
Right. Yes.
Pardon my ignorance. Is that salivary testing?
No, these are samples of the lesion itself.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes.
When are you going to collect the data after the application of the SDF? You a week? You do
No, a month.
Oh, a month. Okay.
Yeah. Because some of the data in the literature, and if you've done it yourself, you know that it takes a little bit of time for the lesion to actually completely harden. And so we wanted to give it a solid month to make sure, within a month, if the lesion is going to harden, it harden with that single application. So that's why we chose to wait 1 month. yeah. And we are offering this patients, actually, we're paying for the restorative treatment for what the lesion would have been. What we're finding anecdotally, and this is just anecdotally, these are the patients that are coming to our graduate clinic. So these are people normally that can pay. These are not the underserved populations. And we are offering a free restoration at the end of whatever it is aesthetically. So they only have to be 1 month with that root black, and we are having a heck of a time recruiting people to participate. But this is an affluent, this is a clinic that sees a sociodemographic that is completely different than the traditional sociodemographic that where some of these products would be really, really helpful, right? So, and we're not collecting that data, so it's just an anecdote. I can't tell you much more other than that, but the main outcome is bacterial data.
Okay, so we're going to thank you very much, Margarita.
Thank you.
Are there any other ongoing clinical trials before we move on that anybody wants to mention? There's a whole session Saturday morning. So I want to thank Yi-Hong Lee for yielding her time. There are only a handful of us who are really interested in doing the mechanistic work, and so in the interest of time, we're going to go to Kevin Thomas and then Mike Shirtcliffe, and if there's any time left, we can do the discussion that we were hoping to do. And so if anybody's interested in mechanistic work, we're going to try to get together tomorrow, so talk to Yi-Hong Lee, myself, or Chuck Cito. So Kevin. Oh yeah, Yi-Hong wants to say one more. One sentence.
I did a search like him. If you type, the apps, and use the apps. So I did a silver and a nitrate or silver diamine or silver. There's a 56 related abstract in this meeting. And so I read every single one of those. So 4 are reviewed, and 12 clinical trials, 19 materials. They try to do some, change the property of the material, deal with the vacuum. And the mechanism is 8. So I would just try to say what they're doing in 8. 4 out of the 8 is really talking about the toxicity. So we have to really just want to keep that in mind. The silvers may have some, we don't know. We don't really have a full understanding of how that will affect the pulp tissues. That's what I want to say.
Thank you.
Very careful.
Thank you. I'll be very fast. My name is Kevin Thomas. I know many of you. I used to own a company called Omni Oral Pharmaceuticals. We sold in 2006 to 3MSP. So if you know Vanish Varnish, Clinpro 5000, Paradex, that was our company. We're the marketers for, we came back, started a new company called Elevate Oral Care. We're the marketers in the US and now in Canada for Advantage Arrest. So I want to go through just a couple quick things. Dr. Horst asked me to kind of give you a feedback on what's happening here in the launch in the United States. I think some of the quick feedback I can give you tells you what doctors here are asking for, and I'll explain why. So I'll try to get through this quickly. So some of this is repeat. But one of the things, so that people around the globe understand, we're cleared as a desensitizer. We are not allowed by law to talk to doctors about off-label use of caries control. I can't advertise it, we can't advertise it. If a dentist comes to me one-on-one, we can go to them with what we have as a scientific literature review packet, where I'll email it out to them and shows all the studies, good and bad, questions and answers, and that's the only thing we can do. The other thing we do is when people ask us about this, we can also then set up meetings with them. I'll tell you about that. So to give you a little pictorial of what's happening here in the United States, this is a schematic of sales in the United States of bottles by state. So the darker the blue, the more the bottles. Makes sense that California is very dark, right? By itself, it'd be the 8th largest country in the world. So that kind of makes sense. Some things that jump out at you here is you see where kind of this started in Oregon. Obviously, for that state, it's very strong, same up in the Northwest. It kind of says to me, because I know prevention in the United States, it says there's some weak spots here. Illinois, who's got a lot of population in this country, very little usage of it. Some of that probably has to do with schools.
ADA.
Nice. Somebody had to say it.
American Dietetic Association.
So the other thing I can tell you is from kind of a mix, and this is data from our system. So if you go into our system, we're a direct company, we don't sell through distribution. I can tell you that pediatric dentists that are the 16.2% are probably about 5.5% of the dental offices in the United States. So obviously, this is very heavy on the pediatric dental side. We have a lot of general dentists that have it, but there's many that have no clue. Dental Town came up with a survey that was in their magazine last month, and in that survey, 86% of general dentists had heard about it, never used it, or don't even know what this is. 86%. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen in this area. So one of the things we do is we have two people, Steve Pardue, who some of you know, and Haley Buckner. When somebody comes to us and wants to know about it, we can train them. So we've conducted 420 sessions, 1-hour sessions over the phone, go-to meetings, for about 3,150 staff. We have a field staff. We think we've done about 2,300 staff meetings. So we are educating offices on this. When they come to us, we can't promote it out to them. So we've talked to a lot of them. And we have some podium support and some podium not support. And I'll kind of go through that. So I went to Steve and I went to Haley and said, what are they asking you? What are the most common questions? These are the most common questions from dentists right now, is how do I restore this? If I have to restore it, what's the technique? How do I bond? Do I excavate before application? Do I not excavate? It's a very foreign thing to dentists. You got to understand. General dentists just don't think this way, like you all think in this room. I leave caries there, really. I walk away from it. So what materials for what situation, and how do I mask it? So that's a big thing. Another big thing they're asking about is light cure. When do I light cure? Do I light cure? Does it change color? How does it change color? Potassium iodide, reapplication protocol, big one. I know you all are talking about twice a year now. We're kind of, when they ask, we tell them that. There's not a whole lot of data out there. That's one area that I think we could use some research on. And then how many sites treated per visit. This is off-label for the use. So the FDA required us to do a dental hypersensitivity package insert. And in that, they required us to say for use in adults over 21. So pediatric dentists that first got this look at it, or speakers from the podium get up there and say, well, you can't use this stuff. It says 21. Why are you using this on kids? Well, the whole off-label thing comes up and they calm down, and fluoride varnish is not used on kids. It's a desensitizer. It's all used off-label, and they kind of calm down. So that's what dentists are telling us. Developmental opportunities, when I look at that, primary prevention. A lot of the discussions, can this replace the sealant? Can this, is this effective on root caries? We tell them there's no evidence. We can't tell them there's any evidence. So I think this is one area that would be big. Use a diagnostic appointment prior to a restorative appointment. I mean, in the United States, you come in, I see a caries lesion, go away from me for about 6 weeks and I'll restore that in 6 weeks. So, you can't get there, come back in 6 months, I'll restore it. Some dental offices are saying, why don't I treat it now in the non-site bearing area, let them come back and I can see the area, then you've got 2 or 3 choices, patient. You don't have to restore it if you don't want to. If you want to restore it, we know it was right, we were right, it was a lesion, I can see that dark spot, so you got choices. Smart children, smart adult, are they different? People want to know. Use under crown, and you guys have talked about this, and one big area is non-discoloration. If you Google it, you'll find nano, and you'll find nano doesn't stain. When are you going to have nano? So that's one of the things that we're hearing out there. Just so you have a feel for it, we have a bottle version. We launched a unit dose version. The reason why we launched unit dose is schools came to us and said, give me unit dose. I don't want to give a student a bottle that has 250 uses. That bottle's not going to come back to the dispensary, so give me unit dose. Hospitals want unit dose. Some of them require unit dose. From a reimbursement update, we think there's about 8 states out there covering. A year ago at the Medicaid Symposium, North Carolina announced that they're covering it. Guess what? North Carolina hasn't implemented that because their system had an error in it. And because the system had an error, they haven't been able to fund it because they haven't figured out this computer glitch to pay for it. So they still haven't paid for it. Third-party pay, just so you know, Delta Dental has said that January 1st, 2018, it will be part of their national plans. That is, they decided that last summer, so they're waiting 18 months to implement it, and they're half the private pay in the United States. And then fluoride varnish was launched in about 1990. It got a code in 2006. In the United States, SDF was launched in May of 2015. It got a code January 1st of 2016. January 1st of 2018, 2 weeks ago, the ADA Code Review Committee, AAPD, put in a request to change the nomenclature from application and add per tooth. So January 1st, it's going to per tooth 2018. We just heard about this 2 weeks ago. That will be huge. And I can tell you anecdotally, what you hear right now is staining is a big issue. There was a pediatric dentist speaking at the California Society of Pediatric Dentistry this week in Arizona, said it's the last resort that you want to use because of staining. Every study I see, I talk to you anecdotally, your parents are saying 300 cases, I remember you saying 3 rejections, and the anterior rejection was about 30%. Dentists from the podium are projecting their views out, parents don't want this. Well, that's not the case, so I think we have to get that in front of people. And that little girl right there is Olive Eloise Hogan. She was patient 0 for Advantage arrest in the United States a month before launch. That's my granddaughter. So when a dentist says to me, which they have done, I'm on a couple boards that serve kids, where they said, you know, kids are going to be marginalized with this, and I wouldn't use it. I look at them and say, what were you going to use on my child, my granddaughter? So she was patient 1. She got this. This was about 2 months ago. She was crying in the chair 18 months ago. She didn't want to be there. She happily goes to the dental office now, repaints it, no restorative, no sedation, which was recommended. Then the one thing I love you guys, because you guys can be change agents right now, we're adding a tint to the material. About 18 months ago, dentists came to us and said, not me, but my associates in the office that are less hand-friendly, it's leaving the lesion, going to an area anterior that they didn't want this to hit. Can you either gel it or turn it a color? So 18 months ago, we started working on dyeing the material. We had to prove that it didn't affect efficacy, no gases are coming off, nothing happened to it. We got to that point. Our manufacturer is waiting. We make it here in the United States, package it here in the United States. They need to hear from me tonight on one of 2 colors of blue. So you all can select what blue this is going to be moving forward. So I've got 2 bottles back there. So at the end of the day, I've got 2 bottles back here. You guys are going to select A or B, and that's what's going to be. That's what they're going to manufacture starting tomorrow. So probably in about 3 to 6 months, as inventory changes out, it'll start having a blue tint to it. Jason Hirsch, if any of you know him, I gave him a bottle a while ago, and he said, I don't need that. He needed another bottle. I gave him a clear bottle. He said, do you have that blue bottle? Dude, I thought you didn't need it. Shut up. Give me a bottle. So I'll have that in the back of the room.
Ali?
Okay, just quick question. So on reimbursement, any place that is reimbursing it right now that you know of then?
There are a lot of programs paying for it right now. So I think there are 8 states paying for it. Oregon is active in paying for it. Iowa, Delta's paying for it. January 1st, Delta, Wisconsin started paying for it. So the Delta's made the decision January 1st of 2018 for national plans. States themselves started covering it independently.
And then average payment?
Slightly above fluoride varnishes. I tell you what about that. So now what's going to happen is that was for an application of 5 teeth in the mouth. Now they've got to switch to per tooth, and I've talked to them to say, are you going to now pay 5 times that? They said, yeah, because that is a drop in the bucket for them in reimbursement. They say, yes, that's what we'll pay. So
we were starting to try to create a register of what states and what insurances and what plans and all that and, are covering at what rates, and it just changes every month, so it's hard to keep track of. So that's all. I would be honored to have Mike Shercliffe come to the podium and tell us about how this stuff actually happens. If you've noticed, there's been researchers, there have been company people, and you're noticing that there's a fusion of all of this. I think it's the most amazing story that ultimately we're here talking about this in the United States at least, because a community clinic and a public health professor got together. Does anybody know of an FDA-approved drug that came because of a community clinic and a professor at a school? So, how does this happen, Mike?
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm quite humbled to be amongst all you folks that I read about and look at your literature and read about it. I especially want to thank Peter Milgram, who's become a dear friend. And without Peter, I wouldn't know what I know. And so I really appreciate it. I also want to thank Dr. Kitzhaber, who was the governor of Oregon for 3 years, elected the 4th year, and rather than throw his wife under the bus, he resigned as a governor, his fiance. Without him, I wouldn't have learned all the stuff I know about politics and community-based health care and the education I got about the Affordable Care Act and accountable care organizations and things that happen. I'll try to be brief. It's hard to tell the story in 5 minutes. He said I had 5 minutes, so I'll be brief. I'm riding in the car in one of the worst snowstorms in Oregon's history in my big excursion with Peter Milgren, because he was supposed to fly back from Klamath Falls to Seattle and couldn't, so I'm giving him a ride up to Redmond, hoping we get out of the Redmond airport. And I asked him a question. I said, Peter, is there anything at all we can do with these cavities without filling them? He says, yeah, silver foreign. And I said, what's that? He told me, and I said, where do I get some? He says, you can't. I said, well, why not? He said, well, it's not approved through the FDA. And I said, well, how do we do that? And that's really how it started. And so Advantage Dental, my company, which is, the one thing I wanted to talk about is the reason we were able to do this is the American healthcare system is we sit around in our little factories waiting for people to show up. The bigger the problem, the more we get paid. The biggest little factory is called a hospital. And so we chase widgets. The bigger the widget, the more we get paid. And the problem with that is the incentive is to make more and more complicated solutions to into-disease issues. And I have a picture of a mechanical hand holding a mechanical heart that was in one of the magazines I got that I use when I talk. And dentistry's into the disease solution is an implant crown. Okay, and so the problem with that is we spend more and more time on fewer and fewer people for more and more expensive solutions, leaving more and more people behind for regular basic care. And in my company, we got paid so much per patient per month, and we got this much money, and the disease in the population that I deal with, which is Medicaid and the uninsured, is out of control. Because of the disease out of control, they don't have the resources to use what you and I would do if we go to the dentist to get our teeth fixed, and they don't have the behaviors needed to be able to manage the disease on an individual basis. And that's the world I live in, and so what I could see was, I thought when we got into this, we knew we had to pay different. So my claim to fame is I talked 300 dentists into putting up $10,000 each to fund the company, because I didn't have any money myself, had to borrow my own $10,000. And I also talked them into doing Medicaid dentistry on a capitated basis. Now, if you want to talk to somebody that's had to argue with dentists for 22 years, which you still do because of fee-for-service dentists, I'm one of those folks. But what happened is I thought, and we thought, the individual-based prevention would work. The problem is you're going to teach people who are clinically depressed how to brush and floss their teeth, eat right, show up for their appointments, and do all the things they're supposed to do. It doesn't happen. And so how do we get the disease under control without the patient's compliance is really what we have. And so, and I'm running out of money. And in Oregon, the amount of money we spend on Medicaid has gone from 14% of the total spend to 6%, and we have a better program. We actually have a better program with less money in the total that we spend, and we've done that because we've been forced, because we get X amount of dollars, to rethink how we do things. And one of them is what can we do with these cavities without fixing them, and how do we get these? The problem with it is what I want to know, because the lesion in the tooth, the cavity, is actually a symptom of a disease, a medical disease, is how do I not get the hole? And now we know we have silver, and we know that it works to arrest or at least control that disease. How do I take the population and not get that? And that's one of the things we're working on with Peter, and we're looking at is how do we do that, and how do we get the disease under control of the population? And one of the things that I got the opportunity to do is, if you pay on, the first question I get when you pay on a capitated basis, how do we know if you're going to do enough work? How are we just not taking the money and scamming the system? The second question that comes out is how do you keep from manipulating the system? The third one is how do we know if you're doing the right kind of work? And so one of the things we've developed a lot of tools around is how do we know if we're doing enough work? How do we know if we're not scamming the system? How do we know what kind of outcomes we're getting and things like that? And one of the things that I asked Peter to do, because our belief is we got to take the science out where the people are. not sit around and wait for them to show up, because when they show up with big problems. So how do we take the science out to where they are, and then what interventions, what's the right intervention, who's the right person, where's the right place? And so one of the things I've learned from Peter and everybody over time is how do we do that? And so one of the things Peter and I were able to do is we got a Robert Wood Johnson grant, one of 3 in the country, the only dental one. If we pay different, can we get different outcomes? And so we're in the 3rd year of that, and we've learned a lot about that. But what I wanted to do is I knew we needed to get there. I wanted to formalize a system, get it organized, and then be able to publish some results out of that, see if we can actually, if we can actually help the rest of us change the system out there so we don't chase widgets and we don't have to do fee-for-service anymore. And can we develop ways that allow us to do that? Now, I have to have the disclaimer. My company is half owned with Peter with Advantage Arrest, which has a relationship with Kevin and his company to distribute it. I'm proud, all the money we get from that, we put back into doing the research because we really know that we need to get it approved as a drug to overcome those issues. And so one of the things we're doing is any money we get from Kevin's company and goes into our company, and we then it's going to help us develop the drug piece of it, as well as my company, because we were my company was owned by guys 45 to 55, and now they're 65 to 75, and they wanted out, is to keep a company, I had to go find somebody who would bring some money in to get rid of them, so we keep going. So I partnered up with DentaQuest, got some money from DentaQuest. DentaQuest doesn't have anything to do with Advantage Arrest. They just have to do with the model we have over here. Advantage took some money and set it aside out of that sale so we could continue to do the work over on Advantage Arrest, because getting money for this is tough to do. And so we set some money aside, we've taken the money off of Advantage Arrest that we get, and we're actually funding some of the stuff we need to do to get it approved. One of the things that really works well in funding the way we do is we spend about 5% of our money in R&D. We just set the money aside and it goes to things like this, and which we're able to do because we're not chasing widgets. Now, there are a lot of complications with it because the state of all of dentistry is geared up. It's interesting to me. By and large, the people in the restorative surgical paradigm that chase widgets and do fee-for-service work will not participate in Medicaid. And they do it either consciously or subconsciously because they know what they do doesn't work. But yet, the system over here goes to this system and asks for their advice, and these folks set the standard over here, and it doesn't work. And so I spend a lot of time, arguing with the system so that we can get what we need to do. And so what I try to do is not talk much, and I don't try to talk much about what we do, because when you do, somebody will make you wrong. Because one thing I learned in dental school is we have the myth of the pecking order. I'm number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 in school. And what do we call the last guy in class? Oh, we call him a Dr. 2. I call it the myth of the pecking order. And so we play this right wrong game. And I'm kind of into being happy, healthy, and wealthy. And I really think it's criminal that anybody suffers a ravages of tooth decay using the system that we know doesn't work. And so that's kind of, and I was it 22 years ago. Think about doing this 22 years ago. We have an accountable care organization that we started 22 years ago, which is a group of doctors who take care of a group of people for a block of money to produce outcome. One of the things we're doing right now, and I got the opportunity to speak at Dental Quality Alliance this spring about some of the outcome measure work we're doing, how we proved what we're doing, and how do we do that in a company, in a for-profit company that's owned by a bunch of dentists. And that's why I appreciate Dr. Milgram and all of you folks for what you do, because it allows me to continue to do what I do. So, thanks, Jeremy, for the opportunity.
All right, team. Well, I think that really nicely caps the story. And I think going forward, the biggest lesson that I've learned is really a life lesson, is follow the incentives. If you put the incentives in the right place, then the right things will happen. I will email everybody. I'll probably set up a Google group, a separate one. I know there's already the SDF one, but for this group, and I'll post each question in a separate email thread if you want to contribute. I understand that a lot of emails go out to the wind, but if you guys want to have an online discussion, that's an option. I want to apologize profusely to the subgroup leaders for not actually having the subgroups that we were going to do. I think we'd all feel that this is a really useful meeting. You guys are incredible, so please take the remainder of the time to talk and enjoy.
And thanks again, Kevin.